Good evening and welcome. Today we are standing on the threshold of history as we mark Nigeria's Diamond Jubilee, 60 years of existence as a nation. It is a day that reminds every citizen about the dawn of the nation we call Nigeria, a diverse nation with resilient and hardworking people. Nigerians have gone far and wide, impacting their communities and the world at large. Here at Channels Television, this unique Diamond Independence Anniversary has opened up fresh discussions over the importance of the motto on Nigeria's coat of arms. So today, we'll be reflecting on this and a host of other issues. I'm Ladi Akiridoluale.
And I'm Ijoma Onyato. Congratulations to all Nigerians at home and to all Nigerians abroad as well. Today we're discussing 6 decades of our togetherness, and we're zeroing in on our unity, on our faith, on our peace, and of course the progress that we've made in the last 60 years. We have a distinguished panel of men and women, a live studio audience here in Lagos as well as in Abuja as well. And we have all the guests who will be joining us physically and virtually over the course of the next 3 to 4 hours or so, right, Ladi?
Indeed, Indeed. Every country has its uniqueness in terms of experiences and growth. From 1960 through the military era, then to 1999, when democracy returned, Nigeria is said to have gone through a complex developmental process, the result being where we are today. Not much may have changed in terms of our common challenges, but some of our fellow countrymen have remained globally competitive. Ijoma, let's look at a few of them in the spirit of the celebration.
Yeah, we're celebrating Nigeria's diamonds, as I was saying backstage.
Indeed.
Yes, even though our theme is Diamond in the Rough, let's look at some of them if we have them on the screen. Well, the first one that struck me was the United Nations General Assembly President, that's 2020, Tijani Muhammad Bande. If we can see that, that would be fantastic if our producers can let us see that as well. Yes,
that actually is one of the most, if not the most current one, because his term of office ended barely 2 weeks ago. And during that period, he had, I'm sure he wasn't expecting that, but he had to deal with COVID-19 as a pandemic. And by his own admission, it wasn't the easiest thing.
And of course, we have the re-elected AFDB president, that's Adewumi Adesina.
Okay, finally we have it up
Finally,
now.
we have that. Yes, that's fantastic. And Akinwumi Adesina as well, 2020. Quite something, wasn't it, that period?
Yes, he overcame quite a bit of challenge, shall we call it, to be re-elected. But eventually he was re-elected, and not only was he re-elected, he was re-elected with 100%.
That's right, and it was very emotional listening to him thank everybody for all the support as well. We also have the UN Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, but that's 2016. Yeah?
Indeed, but that she's still there is a testimony to the Nigerian resilience, to the Nigerian competence, to the Nigerian spirit of being able to hold your own wherever we find ourselves.
So we find that there she is, there, broad smile as well. And of course, stopping the spread of Ebola, 2014, Stella Adadiva, Dr. Stella Adadiva, we pay tribute to her. And of course, this is the COVID era.
Indeed.
And we do thank all our health workers, practitioners, everyone on the field there who is doing their best to try and flatten the curve, as we like to say.
At great risk, if I may add, at great risk every day. They're out there, sometimes not as recognized as they ought to be, because sometimes we talk over them instead of talking about them, but they're still there. And today, good opportunity to say thank you.
Then obviously looking at our togetherness and how Nigeria came together at a particular point, there were the Occupy Nigeria protests, but that was 2012.
Well, another seminal point, really.
That's right. Seminal, but nothing, yes, indeed. Then obviously the ceding of the Bakassi Peninsula in 2002, while that wasn't too great for the country.
Indeed.
It was one of the highlights.
It was one of the highlights of the last 60 years.
Yeah, indeed.
A piece of what used to be Nigeria.
That's right. And of course, 2003, Nigeria's first satellites, NigerSat-1, launched by the Russian rockets.
Indeed. At that time, it was said to be Nigeria's own ambition to join those who were in space. And one would think that, well, having done that now, we should be moving on to the next level. But at that point, it was something very
And if you notice, we're counting downwards. So we're going down from 2020
all the way back.
All the way down. So looking back again to 1999, the Justice Oputa panel was set up. And I remember you were talking backstage about the transition.
Yes, a very important point, because at that point, there were so many people who felt aggrieved, who felt hurt, and what the Oputa panel, as it came to be known as, in fact, it was the Nigerian Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but it became known as the Oputa panel.
And they had over 10,000 petitions at the time.
And at the end of it, they treated every single one.
That's right, indeed. Moving downwards again to 1996, Choma Junwa, gold medal for sports. Key highlights, definitely.
First Nigerian to win a gold medal in an individual sport. Incidentally, that was the same year, of course, that the Eaglets, the Flying Eagles, I believe they were known as then, but became golden, also won a gold medal, the likes of Kanuwankwa and the others. That's
right. So when we're heading now to the 80s, Wole Soyinka, Professor Wole Soyinka, Literature and Arts, 1986, another key highlight there.
Indeed, the Nobel Prize became not just the first Nigerian, the first African to be so honored with the Literature Prize in 1986. And there he was, of course, proudly standing with his dashiki, the short one.
At the time.
Yes, indeed.
And of course, the 70s, the key thing in the 70s, I mean, there's so many of them, but we've picked out the name of the Nigerian currency changed to Naira.
Yes, because so many people didn't know that Naira hadn't been the currency all this while, and that it only became the Nigerian national currency in 1970.
And 1 Naira equaled 10 shillings.
Oh, yes. In fact, now there are so many people who don't know what shillings are, or even the conversion. So many people don't know what that is.
And then bring it home now. 1962, Nigeria's currency changed to bear the inscription Federation of Nigeria.
That was the transition from us being a republic, being Westminster style administration to a republic, and that was where we moved from Governor General to being president. So, of course, this was also part of that process.
And so that's where we end up, the Federation of Nigeria. That's what we're looking at, looking back at our milestones. And you're going to talk about what we're going to do next? Yes,
indeed. At this point, let's take a look at Olu Phillips' report. In this report, Olu Phillips takes a look at some of the key landmarks that marked Nigeria's independence.
In the weeks leading to Nigeria's Independence Day celebration in 1960, this entire vicinity was adorned with decorations for the first-of-its-kind event. This landmark monument, housing other important buildings like the old National Assembly complex, stood then and is still standing today as Nigeria marks another independence anniversary. In December 1991, the seat of power was moved from Lagos to Abuja. Before 1914, Nigeria was essentially divided into the northern and southern protectorate and administered by British governors. One of them, a man whose name resonates in our history and journey to nationhood, was Sir Frederick Lugard. Later known as Lord Lugard, he was a British soldier, mercenary, explorer of Africa, and colonial administrator. After relinquishing command of West African Frontier Force, Lugard was appointed High Commissioner of the newly created Protectorate of Northern Nigeria. The proclamation that established that protectorate on 1st of January 1900 was done on these grounds: the Mount Patti, Lokoja, present-day Kogi State. Fascinated by Mount Patti, he built this rest house, which still stands till date. The statues are those of his and his wife, Flora Shaw. This white building served as the seat of Lord Lugard's power during the time when Lokoja served as the capital of Northern Protectorate. With the approval of Northern Nigerian House of Assembly, Sir Ahmadu Bello became the first premier of Northern Region under the Macpherson's Constitution of 1951. Kaduna is historically the capital of the defunct Northern Region. One of the landmark monuments located in the northern part of the state capital is the prestigious Arewa House, the official residence of late Sir Ahmadu Bello, Sardauna of Sokoto, and the first chancellor of the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. He administered the region from here. Sadly also, it was in this house that he was assassinated along with his first wife during a bloody coup by young military officers who toppled Nigeria's post-independence government on January 15, 1966. Now in the care of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria since 1979, and has since been transformed into a center for historical documentation and research. Aside serving as the official residence of the late Sir Ahmadu Bello, Arewa House also has a well-equipped museum, research library, archive, and exhibition galleries. In 1939, the southern provinces or protectorates were divided into the eastern and western regions. And on 1st October 1960, these were incorporated into the Federation of Nigeria. Dr. Michael Okpara was the premier, or the equivalent of a prime minister, while Dr. Akani Biam, the governor general. These relics, this chamber, served as the House of Assembly complex long before independence, as it was used as the Eastern Province Legislative House. These monuments and several other significant landmarks scattered across the country signals a reminder of where we are coming from, how we organized, administered, strategized, executed, and journeyed through all these days. May the labor of our heroes past not be in vain.
Indeed, may the labor of our heroes past not be in vain. Well, as always, we'd like you to be part of the program. Share your comments with us and do have your say as we reflect today. And you can do that using our hashtag Nigeria Diamond in the Rough. There's also hashtag CTV Nigeria at 60. Remember, you can watch us. That's your multiple award-winning station Channels Television. Catch us on DSTV channel 420. You can also catch us live on our website, www.channelstv.com. And you can see us wherever you are in the world. We're ubiquitous, as we like to say over here. Right, Ladi?
That's indeed. That is correct.
Indeed.
At this point, maybe we should bring in our first set of guests. Yeah. We're being joined from our Abuja studios, first by the Minister of Transportation, Honorable Rotimi Amechi. Mr. Amechi, welcome to the program today, and happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
We're also being joined by Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, the Minister of Works and Housing. Good evening, Mr. Fashola. Thank you for your time. Mr. Fashola joins us virtually, as you can see.
Good evening. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Happy anniversary to you, too. We're also expected, of course, to be joined by Dr. Issa Pantami, the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy. But at this point, let me begin straight away with Mr. Amechi. Mr. Amechi, there are those who will argue that where should we be looking at if we're looking for things to celebrate as Nigeria turns 60? Where would you direct them to?
That's a very difficult question to answer. Where would you be looking at? Well, I looked at the projection and the progress we've made in education from 16% to 60%. That's huge improvement. Again, in terms of infrastructure, yes, we may not have done well. Yes, there's huge infrastructure deficit. But like you know, as of today, we are closing in on 700 kilometers of railway. Don't forget that by the time the white men left us, we had about 3,000 kilometers of railway, 3,200 or so kilometers of railway that we are abandoned under the military government. But since we merged, we started construction, so we have inched into about 700 kilometers of railway. That's worthy of celebration. What else? I've talked about education. I've talked about transportation. Well, I let the Minister for Works narrate his story. But I think that these are areas I can think about now. But again, the cities were not like this. Now you have light everywhere. Now you can visit each other. Now in the aviation industry, we've done well. We've done well in the maritime sector. It's good we are making progress. It's huge progress, but it may not be what we want.
All right. Mr. Fashola, the Honorable Minister of Transport has asked me to ask you that you may be able to answer the question in a bit more depth. Let me say something. Earlier on today, you said Nigerians were looking for signs of progress and success in the wrong places, that they needed to look elsewhere. Where do we need to look, and why?
I was answering a question about, and the question that was framed, excuse me, was whether the question was framed that I had somewhat performed magic in Lagos, and that was the context in which I was speaking. That the services that our government then rendered were probably more closely felt by Lagosians rather than people from other states, and that perhaps some of the things that people crave more closely that affects their life on a more daily basis, water supply, managing their refuse, primary healthcare, sanitation, primary education, were things that were closer and to them by the governments of the states and local governments. So that is a context in which what I was saying will be understood. And if you look at federations all over the world, the impact of a federal government in the life of a resident of a state is perhaps much more remote, maybe in terms of fiscal policy, exchange rate, and perhaps security at some level. But some of the things that are more daily needed are responsibilities of the governments that are closer to us. And I urge people, if I wanted more water, if I wanted better healthcare, if I wanted better primary and secondary education for my children, I would be more concerned in an election about who is going to be the governor of the state and the local government chairman where I live than about who will be the president. Because the president is not the one responsible for primary education. That was the point I was making.
But Mr. Fashola, let me ask you a broader question now, because we're looking back 60 years. A ministry like yours is quite key. You're looking at works, you're looking at housing, infrastructure as well. And there's always this argument of policy and results. How do you match both of them together? Looking back in the last 60 years, are we any closer to bridging the gap between there's a policy for something and then we actually see the results or the implementation of it?
Well, I think that if one followed the history of Nigeria that you have relayed, there was a period when we had bounty of oil revenues and they were invested in infrastructure. Infrastructure is so defining for our lives. It defines whether or not I can talk to you now. And that is something that Minister for Communication will speak about his broadband rollout. And it defines education, it defines healthcare, and so it defines how quickly we can do business. It defines whether we can clear our goods at the port better. So the ports we built in the 70s were built at the time when our economy was much smaller than it is today. So if you look at the 70s to now, that's about 40-something years. So it's like I tell people, there's no problem with Nigeria. The problem is that we haven't invested enough in infrastructure to cope with the size of our economic growth and the size of our population growth. So, and I tell people the best way I try to explain this is like, just imagine me trying to wear the clothes I wore in the 70s. If I get into them at all, they will be uncomfortable. And that is the discomfort we're feeling. Happily, I am involved, so I know that tomorrow will be better. I know the commitment of President Buhari to expanding Nigeria's infrastructure. Governor Amechi has told you about what he's doing about rail. I can tell you we have 671 road construction projects nationwide at different stages of completion. Next year, we are trying to deliver 748 kilometers over 22 roads. We have 120 kilometers left to finish those roads, but they are already in use. You can't use a rail halfway, right? But you can use a road while it's being constructed. And those who use those roads will tell you that already the journey times are reducing, even though we haven't finished. And there's a lot more to do. So clearly, for me, Yes, yesterday is gone. Even in those 70s and 60s, we were complaining. We were reporting all sorts of disagreement and all of that, but they are now the glory years. But I am more concerned about looking forward to tomorrow, because I know that when the roads are completed, the rail is completed, Nigeria has 5 international airports being expanded simultaneously by Hadi Sirika. So the broadband plan is coming. Life will be much more comfortable as we go on. It's unfortunate that there is no oil bounty now. We are doing a lot more with less, but as the results fructify, this will be a better place for all of us.
Let me return to Mr. Amechi and talk about the rail that you touched on briefly in your opening statement. What can you tell us about what the idea behind the rail issue is? You talk about Lagos, Ibadan, Ibadan, Kano, and the one from Calabar upwards, and then the one I think that joins the east to the north. What's the binding idea behind this, and what's it going to do for the country?
Well, I think that there will be no economic development if you don't deal with logistics completely. That's why you see people are rushing into Lagos, because it's closer to the water. Now, if you don't deal with logistics, just imagine what's happening at Apapa. The madness in Apapa over movement of cargoes and movement of goods is because of the poor road network. Now, so if you complete Lagos to Kano, the Lagos to Kano has the capacity to move as many million tons of cargo as possible. Currently, the total good capacity for Lagos, for those who are importing from Lagos to Kano, is about 30 million tons of cargo in a year. The capacity of Nigerian Railway Corporation as of today is about 200,000 cargoes per year. That's appalling. So if you want to make the factors of production to be cheap and make our goods to be competitive, then you must provide logistics, either the road or by air or by railway. But the cheapest form of transport in this regard, among these three, is railway, because it's subsidized by the government. So what's the idea of complying with instruction by the president that all seaports, all railway must terminate at the seaports? It's because you want to move your cargo. The moment you begin to move cargo, and you will see this transformation where people are now moving from Lagos to Ogun State and Oyo State. So once you provide this railway, three things will happen. The first is that people who can't afford accommodation in Lagos will now live in Ibadan or live in Abeokuta and transport to Lagos. You can leave, by the time we commission this project in January, you can leave Ibadan at 6 o'clock and arrive Lagos at 7:30 if that's where you go to, if that's where you work. Now, the movement of cargo will improve the industrial development of Nigeria. So those who want to establish industries around Lagos and they don't have enough land would move to Ogun State and or move to Oyo, because they can move their goods quickly. In fact, the government will be prepared to put spurs for those who we think are participating in industrial development, manufacturing, and send spurs to them so that they can move their finished products to the seaport or to Lagos market or the nearest market possible. For when we complete it, because before the end of this year, we should be able to start the Ibadan to Kano. Currently we are clearing and getting ready for Kano to Kaduna, then Abuja to Mina to Ilorin to Ibadan. That will complete the Ibadan to Kano or Lagos to Kano. Then similarly, where you have this about 2 seaports or river ports in Port Harcourt, you'll be able to transport a lot of iron ore deposits in the northeast, huge iron ore deposits in the northeast. So you just imagine that you provide this railway from here to the northeast. And what is from Port Harcourt to the northeast? You move from Port Harcourt, you go to Aba, you go to Mahia, you go to Enugu, you go to Makurdi, Lafia, Jos. Around Kafanchan, we are linking Kafanchan to Abuja, to Kaduna. So from there you can go to Kaduna and then go to Abuja. But from Kafanchan or from Jos, you go to Bauchi and then Gombe and then Damaturu and Makurdi. The completion of this project, which we hope that if it doesn't start this year, it will start first quarter next year. The completion will do one thing. It will move cargo. It will create, and as moving cargo, it is creating employment. It's creating industrial development. And people will gain, and it will grow the economy. So the same is applicable to Lagos to Calabar. We're looking at from Lagos to Calabar, going through Ore, going to Benin, going to Abo, Asaba, and Onitsha, and then continuing from Benin to Warri, other to Ueli, Sapele, to Yanagua, to Port Harcourt, to Aba, and then to Uyo, and then to Calabar. If you finish it, there's a central line we've awarded about a year ago. Central line is Abuja to Baro, Baro to Itape, and then with the deep sea port in Warri. All that, once you finish all these projects, you have interlinked Nigeria. Goods are able to move freely. The same is applicable to Kano to Maradi, which people are misunderstanding. The reason for that Kano to Maradi, which is a huge argument that people are making, or misleading people, is that you're able to move the cargoes you get from the landlocked countries, which currently we're not doing well, because competitively, we have Benin Republic, we have Togo, we have Ghana, all trying to move these goods from the landlocked countries into their own seaport. And when you ask them, what is the problem why you can't move through Nigeria? They tell you about insecurity, they tell you about customs, they tell you about police checkpoints and all that.
Okay, Mr. Mechi, we hear you. We're going to come back to you. If you can hear me, we're going to come back to you, but want to look, we've heard about your plans and where you plan the lines to extend to logistics, security, and how much it's going to cost. But we've done a bit of a look at that, and let's take a look at this, and then we'll continue the conversation and go back to Mr. Fashola as well.
Railway, waterways, road, air travel, the options abound, but how many are optimally functional in Nigeria? The Chartered Institute of Transport Administration in Nigeria says poor transportation infrastructure across the supply chain is eating up the economy, and about 46% goes to the manufacturing business. The rail system provides a viable alternative to road transportation, but in Nigeria, that means of transportation is still a work in progress. The Minister of Transport says the Lagos to Kano rail has the capacity to move 30 million tons of cargo, while Port Harcourt to Maiduguri will attract only 11 million tons.
It will continue to the construction from Ibadan to Kano. Once we do that, you see that this will be dissipating. The goods will be dropping the goods. The ones going to Ilorin will end up at Ilorin. The ones going to Kano will end up at Kano.
Freight movement on one hand, human mobility on the other. Lagos, the home of notorious traffic, provides a strong case study for a state in need of an urgent solution.
The major thing that we are doing now, which will have given us a big leap, is rail. But my sadness about the rail is that we are outsourcing those things that we can do to China. Look, they are providing the money, no doubt, but there are things we can do that can say, okay, let us start to do this. What is the rocket science in laying our tracks?
Nigeria has 8,600 kilometers of inland waterways, a path less traveled even in the Niger Delta, a region defined by its waters. Road travel is mainstream, and that explains the traffic situations in so many places. In Lagos State, for instance, an average of 480,000 passengers are expected to be ferried across the state. But that number represents a very small amount of people who move across the state on a daily basis. How many people would trust this means of transportation is another question. But in other states, the options are even more limited. Bauchi State is one. The commuters are left with motorcycles and tricycles that are passed to get the job done in a less congested state.
I prefer to climb bike, but the way they are moving, we will just advise them to, let me just say, to avoid rough driving.
With efforts made so far to unlock Nigeria's economic potentials, there are still gaps. Budgetary allocations and other spendings in the transport sector may not yield the expected results if the means of transportation are not effective enough to connect cities on time for the realization of national goals. Dari Ido, Channels Television News.
All right, we're back. Thanks for that. And Mr. Mechi, you heard that. How do you react to it?
Let me start by correcting the report that says I said that the railway from Lagos to Kano has the capacity to move 30 million tons of cargo. It has capacity to move hundreds of millions of cargo. What I said is that Nigerians move 30 million tons of cargo in a year. That's Nigerians, not the train. The railway has capacity to move hundreds and hundreds of millions of cargo as far as you can produce. But you know Nigeria is not productive as at now. So the railway is built to improve on production and reduce the cost of production. If you look at the report, I agree with that about 46% of cost of production goes to transportation. So what the federal government is doing is to provide this transportation so that you can reduce, if possible, the cost of transportation, which is given to the manufacture of goods from 46% to 5%. And that's why there's this emphasis on railway, because it's the easiest, quickest, and cheapest form of transportation of cargoes. Let me give you an example. To move any of our locomotives or coaches from Lagos to Abuja takes us 14 days. But the moment we complete the railway up to Abuja, the same day, in fact, you get to Abuja, to Lagos from Abuja in 6 hours if you leave Abuja at 6 o'clock on our railway at 120 kilometers per hour.
Okay, Mr. Fashola, we're coming to you. We haven't forgotten you there. We also, indeed, we also took a look at infrastructure and everything just surrounding that particular ministry. Let's look at that, and then we'll come back, and then you can react to it.
Infrastructures are important for faster economic growth and poverty reduction in a country, and they come in form of road and railway transport system, housing, ports, power, airports, pipe-borne water supply. Roads transport infrastructure are significant for the movement of goods and services, as well as the facilitation of infrastructure development. It would appear, however, that since independence in 1960, Nigeria has not been able to overcome the road network's deficiency, as the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, in 2009, described Nigeria's road networks as the worst and among the deadliest in the world. Data from the African Development Bank shows that as of 1960, Nigeria had 6,500 kilometers of national road networks, and by 2010, the number had jumped to 197,000 kilometers, 18% of which was paved as of 2011. Up till December 2019, the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, however, delivered over 2,075 kilometers of road, with some more than 5,000 other kilometers set for delivery by the end of 2020.
Most of our roads have been asphalt roads, which in itself has not been bad. However, because of the peculiar nature of our topology, the curvatures and the nature of our roads in the south, the acidity, the alkalinity of roads, we've had problems maintaining those roads.
Safe, secure, healthy, and inexpensive housing is a human right in the United Nations Habitat Agenda of 2001. These various governments have attempted to put in place through affordable housing schemes, but according to the Center for Affordable Housing Finance Africa, there's still a shortage of housing to the tune of 22 million in Nigeria. Through the efforts of the Federal Housing Authority today, just a little over 1,094 housing units have been completed with ongoing construction works across 34 states of the Federation.
So you're not going to be able to do much stuff if you don't have the revenue. So, we wish that we have all these things, but they're not happening the way they should happen, and that's why we're relying on borrowing.
The lingering deficit in the delivery of housing and road efficiency by successive governments since 1960 has been attributed to funding constraints. The Federal Ministry of Works, for example, says it requires some 600 billion naira to deliver 200,000 housing units per annum.
Okay, there we have it. Mr. Fashola, just like you to react there. Again, we hear that resource versus the wish, what you want to do against how much you have to achieve it. Would you like to respond to what we have there?
Okay, I'm going to start from the theme under the caption Diamond in the Rough. That's where I want to start. And if you've seen diamond before, it's always found in the rough. So you have to first get it out, clean it, and then polish it. That cleaning and polishing is what I am engaged in with my colleagues in the government of Nigeria today. So that diamond will be polished and it will be what we want to see in a few years' time. That said, I made the point earlier about our underinvestment in infrastructure. The investment was not commensurate to our growth as in terms of population, neither was it commensurate to the growth in terms of businesses. And at one time in this country, I think in 2005, we had $12 billion available. At that time, these roads were bad. At that time, there was no rail. But what did we do as a matter of national policy? We chose to pay creditors to our own detriment. I can only imagine if I had the opportunity there with $12 billion in my hand, we would have built the rail, we would have built the roads. That said, what this government is dealing with, and which I am responsible for the roadside, is infrastructure that will be enduring. Without the rail, we will not have roads that last, because trucks, heavy cargo is normally not meant for the road, normally. So the jurisdictions we want to be like don't transport fuel, they don't transport heavy cargo, they don't transport containers on their roads. So as I say, this is why I am so optimistic about tomorrow, that if we advance this significantly, there will be a better tomorrow. The final point I want to also make is that whilst the infrastructure is being built, people must pause to also understand and observe the economic impact. The reason why infrastructure is a linchpin for development is that it helps to distribute wealth. So from the man who owns a quarry to the man who owns land that is used as a borrow pit, every day trucks are moving to collect laterite, to collect sharp sand, to collect stones, to supply diesel, to supply iron rod, to demand cement. Other sectors of the economy are galvanized into productive activity. That is the first benefit of infrastructure development, and you will see it either on the rail tracks, you see it in the airports, you see it on the roadside. And this is a continuing undertaking that must continue for any nation that wants to live the quality of life we expect and we deserve. And this is what we're currently doing. Of course, it is tough to finance it. The global economy is in a difficult place, and we are employing a multiplicity of funding sources, from borrowing like the Sukuk, to tax credit, to taking export credit like Chinese loans. This is where we were. We lost the opportunity to invest $12 billion, and then we went back to borrow. And the problems haven't gone away, and they have to be dealt with. I think that if we invest the money properly, as we are doing, the productivity of this nation, the expansion in trade, the revenues that will come from that, will leave us in a much more better place to service our debts and become a globally competitive and productive nation. I am convinced that this infrastructure program is the right path to take. It's a painful pill, and we are building now through heavily built, heavily congested areas. The Lagos-Ibadan, for example, was built as a virgin road. Now we are building through 50,000 vehicles a day. Managing traffic is much more challenging, and there have been lost opportunities, but I don't look at lost opportunities. I'm looking at the possibilities and the promise of tomorrow.
You're throwing it back to Mr. Amechi now, because you've said there that without the railways and enduring railways, we will not have enduring roads. So, Mr. Amechi, exactly. I'm going to throw that back to you now to say, is there some sort of collaboration between the two ministries?
His biggest champion, I'm his biggest champion in the cabinet when he's presenting his memo for rail. Because I know that without the rail, the roads will not last. The tankers are applying excess cargo. They are moving 60,000 tons instead of 33, 40, 45 maximum. So the best way is to move all that cargo onto the tracks. That is what happens in the countries we want to be like, and that is where we are heading.
So, Mr. Mechi, I'm going to let you...
So that's my support.
Yes. I'm going to let you respond to that now. This is coming to you directly. Is there some sort of collaboration between the two so you can have like an ecosystem around the railways that will spill into housing, spill into roads, etc.?
Well, let me thank the class captain, Babatunde Fashola, and say to you that I agree with him completely. I intend to approach him in January and approach the Lagos State government so that let's see how we can deal with Apapa. Why I say that is that by December to first or second week in January, we should have completed the Lagos-Ibadan. Then if we do, there will be the need to decide what vehicles that can go to Lagos and the capacity of such vehicles or trucks. If you do that, you reduce the destruction that's happening on our road because then we'll transfer all those cargoes that they carry from Papa's seaport to the railway. We believe that we could transfer that up to Ibadan while we are still constructing from Ibadan to Kano. And don't forget, the moment you transfer those cargoes into the rail, a lot of them will be dropped between Lagos and Ibadan and Ogun State. So the remainder will then go to their destinations, probably Kano, probably Ilorin, and all that. And in the next 1 to 2 years, in the next 2 to 3 years, we will see how much we would have tried to complete the Ibadan to Kano. The more we complete, the more we're able to move these cargoes out of the road so that we can save the roads. Similarly, the same will happen in the area of Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. In fact, I remember that somebody said it has capacity for 11 million tons. Again, what we are doing from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri has capacity for hundreds and hundreds of tons of cargoes. But for now, what cargoes that go between Port Harcourt and Maiduguri is about 11 million tons after the study that we did. So I agree completely with the Minister for Works, Babatunde Fashola, and say to Nigerians to be more patient with us, more understanding, and allow us complete the infrastructure development. I would like to end it here to say, look, it wasn't like this before. We had money to construct this railway. The total funds that we needed to complete the entire railway all over the country was about $36 to $40 billion. And we had it. We had this kind of money when we were selling crude at 110, 120 per listen. Now the money is no longer there. The president allows us to borrow, and we're borrowing to develop, and things will change. Certainly things will change.
I must, in the remaining minutes that we have, ask both of you, the one thing that many people will be looking at is the question of the cost of all of this. Cost in terms of what it takes to build it, and then cost in terms of what it takes to maintain it. Let me start with you, Mr. Fashola. There was a time in the country that we had tolls on the road, toll gates on some of the major federal roads, and the money from those tolls were supposed to be used to maintain the roads. Those were scrapped at some point. They were supposed to be introduced or reintroduced. What's the situation now? What are you going to do?
Well, let me say first that it depends on how you measure cost, right? We've lost the opportunity to invest, so let's leave that beside. We now have a choice to borrow and invest or increase taxes. The latter, increasing taxes is not an option, not a reasonable option. Until we grow the economy and people earn more, then that will be the basis to then say, okay, maybe you pay more. But that's a matter further down a few years. Let us look at the other cost, the cost of not doing it today. You'll be doing it at tomorrow's price. So I give an example. When we built the Lekki Link Bridge in Lagos, some people complained that, oh, it was too expensive. Why did we borrow? But we borrowed at yesterday's cost to build tomorrow's infrastructure. And we have paid largely most of that fund back. So that's how I measure cost, not only in terms of absolute cash, but the opportunity cost. I hear the argument about, oh, mortgaging the future of tomorrow's children. The truth is that every generation that is responsible like us must position for tomorrow's children. We should not leave it for them to come and do. It will be more expensive. That said, I think the way to go is to say that at the appropriate time, a tolling policy will be developed. For you to toll, you have to ordinarily provide alternatives. And then, quite aside, government must continuously understand not all of its infrastructure is of a commercial kind. There's social infrastructure and there's commercial infrastructure. For example, not all roads will be viable for tolling, because I just gave you the traffic count for Lagos-Ibadan. There's about 50,000 vehicles. Out of that, about 5,000 trucks. So if many of those trucks go onto transportation's rail, how many trucks can you then expect to pay tolls? If many people start finding that, okay, Lagos to Ibadan, let me enter a train and leave their cars at home, how many more vehicles would you see? But you will see longer lasting assets. But the possibility for tolls remain. And if you've been following my ministry, you will see that we have something called the Highway Development Management Initiative, which is to offer about 12 roads, totaling about 1,920 kilometers for concession, possible tolling, ambulance service, tow trucks, lane marking, and toll plazas. But this is a work in progress. But right now, the work of today, as mandated by the president, is go and continue to build as much infrastructure as you can to bring relief to Nigerians.
All right, let's also take your closing remarks, Mr. Mechi, as we wrap this up pretty quickly. Your closing remarks on a day like this.
Well, let me thank you for the opportunity to be able to address as many Nigerians as possible and say to them, all of us in government are grateful for the opportunity to serve. And we're grateful to God, we're grateful to the president, and we're grateful to Nigerians. And we say to you, on the side of railways and maritime, don't forget that what we met was not a seaport. What we met were river ports. The Apapa port is a river port. The Tinkan port is a river port. The Port Harcourt and Onne ports are all river ports, including Calabar and Warri. It is now that we're developing seaport. The first seaport that will emanate in Nigeria is the Lekki Deep Seaport, which has capacity for about, the draft is between 15 and 16 to 17 meters deep. So you can take, because they've stopped all these small ships that they're bringing very big vessels. Now these vessels anchor in the ocean, and then we transfer to smaller ships that bring them to Nigeria, which is bad. So by the time we complete the Lekki Deep Seaport, I should go to see the Lekki Deep Seaport before the end of October to see how far they have gone. By the time we conclude that, then we'll be able to take one of those vessels that have the 17-meter draft. Similarly, the president has approved that we'll construct a deep sea port in Bonny, which will start by next year. And if we do that and complete it in 2 to 3 years, that's huge improvement. And the same way he has approved that we'll construct with Warri Deep Sea Port. So all I'll say to Nigerians, let's be more understanding and calm. We are looking for money. Nobody wants to mortgage Nigeria. We all love Nigeria the way they love Nigeria. But if you don't borrow, this seaport that today we're doing at the deep seaport in Bonny is about $500 million. The one in Lekki Deep Seaport is about $1.something billion. It will be twice the cost by the time if we don't borrow to do them. And for the deep seaport, we're not borrowing. We're not borrowing. It's other PPP, and it's being consulted and funded by a Chinese company. The one in Port Harcourt is also not funded by government. It's not a loan. It will be funded by CCCC as part of their investments in Nigeria. The same with the one at the Warri Port. The only place we are borrowing money will be railways, and there's no way we can mortgage Nigeria. All the terms are carefully looked at by the Attorney General and his team, and then the Federal Ministry of Finance will borrow, and the Federal Ministry of Transportation will construct these railways. It is my delight to acknowledge the great stride that Nigeria has made, and I'm proud, very proud to be a Nigerian. Thank you very much.
Minister for Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, thanks a lot for joining us. Congratulations once again to all Nigerians. Happy Independence Day as well. Ladi?
Let's also thank, of course, Babatunde Raji Fashola, Minister of Works and Housing. Very optimistic, both of them were, and we can only hope and pray that their dreams become reality.
That's right. And we have another Babajide in the room, Channels TV's data analyst. He's going to take us through the years. Now, you've heard those two particular sectors. We've looked at transportation over the years. We've looked at housing as well and works. So you're going to run us through what the statistics say, how we're doing today.
Especially in terms of promises made and how well they've been kept.
Promises made. You know, today is the Independence Day. The 1st of October 1960 is a date for which, for 2 years, Nigerians have been looking forward to. Now, those are not my words. Those were the words on Independence Day by the Prime Minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. So I like the way he started his own Independence Day speech, looking forward to. Today, in the president's speech, we've seen what he's looking forward to. Though independence was 1960, based on the president's words, we are rebuilding the foundation. So 2020 might actually be 1960 for the president. I'd like to talk about what he said and how he said it. Looking at this time around, the president gave his Independence Day speech with less than 2,000 words. That's been consistent with, now he's had 6 Independence Day speeches. Only in 2 Independence Day speeches has he read more than 2,000 words. So we see a lot of consistency in today's speech. And we also see him asking a lot of questions. Where did we get it wrong? If we got it wrong, and what is the course for the future? So this speech today had more questions that we'll hopefully within the next 3 hours we'll be able to answer. But the first question is, Nigeria at 60, yes, 60 years. But in other words, this is 21,915 days as an independent country. You heard me right, 21,915 days. Why is this important? The reason why this is important is, even though we spent over 21,000 days, laddie, 11,363 of these days were under military leadership. In other words, approximately 48% of our time since independence, approximately 48%, you heard that right, has been based on military leadership. And that's what all of this shows. So if I were to describe Nigeria based on 48% military leadership and the rest being civilian, Nigeria's body structure is civilian, but in our blood, we still have a lot of military. But the focus should also go on into what are we producing as a nation. And there's a significant difference between how we started this journey 6 decades ago and how we are now. Some describe Nigeria as a transgender nation. And this is because in 1960, 97% of everything that was leaving the Nigerian ports was non-oil exports, 97%. And we've seen that consistently decline decade on decade. By 1970, only 42% of our total exports was non-oil. And in 10 years, between 1970 and 1980, we see a significant decline. By 1980, only 4% of our exports was oil. But that's not the bad news. In 1990, it went worse to 3%. And when we started the Fourth Republic by the year 2000, our non-oil exports relative to our total exports was down to only 1%. But the good news is we've seen a build-up. Between 2000 and 2010, our total non-oil exports has grown to 6%. And between 2010 to year to date, we now have 15% of our total exports being non-oil. So that's some good news.
So as someone used to manipulating data, for instance, we started high, and now you're saying we're seeing a progression going up. Are we going up again in the next decade?
It depends on what our focus is. Right now, even though we have 15% of our non-oil exports, 15% of our total exports being non-oil, that doesn't mean agriculture contributes to a lot of exports. At the moment, agriculture only contributes to 3% of our total exports. And so there's still going to be a lot of emphasis on, are we going to be exporting agricultural products or manufactured products? As it is today, the statistics we have shows that our manufactured exports accounts for more than agricultural exports. So again, year to date, 2020, January to June, agriculture only accounts for 3% of Nigeria's total exports. So we've seen a significant change in how the economy is. Again, 97% of our total exports were non-oil in 1960, and we're down to 15%, but we've seen some growth within the last 2 decades.
It's interesting, Jide, because, you know, we have a poll out as well, looking at which of the sectors people think are performing the greatest in the last 6 decades. Agriculture, as at when last we checked, came out top. So it's interesting you should mention that.
Well, we need to put a lot of investment into agriculture, not just the government, but private sector, because agriculture today is a sector that employs most Nigerians. Yeah. And we need to move away from manual agriculture to mechanized agriculture. So that really will be the future if future governments decide to move
in that direction.
Sort of policies and programs that will attract more domestic investment, not just international investments, more domestic investments to be able to improve opportunities for young Nigerians in the agricultural sector. But there's been a lot of questions about which of these decades, the last 6 decades, did Nigeria earn a lot of this money? And a lot of effort has gone into trying to find out how much money did the country make in each year. And the evidence shows that Nigeria earned its highest revenue in today's dollar terms within that 2001 to 2010 period. In that decade, we earned $446 billion. The second decade, we earned the highest revenue, 1971 to 1980, in today's dollar terms, $415 billion. And in 2011 to 2019, $413 billion in today's dollar terms. What does this mean? These 3 decades, since 1960, Nigeria has earned the equivalent of $2 trillion. You heard me right. $2 trillion in today's Naira terms, or 70% of that money was earned in just 3 decades. 2001 to 2010, 1971 to 1980, 2001 to 2019. So these 3 decades shows that those are the decades that Nigeria earned its highest revenue. 70% of the $2 trillion in today's Naira was earned in those 3 decades. But clearly, one other big topic today, as Nigerians look forward, is how much is in their pockets. Yes, today's minimum wage is 30,000 Naira. Based on the volatilities we are seeing in the exchange rate, 30,000 Naira per month is equivalent to $65 per month. But let's look at what had happened in previous decades. In 1990, 250 Naira. Then, Ladi, I'm sure you know, in 1990, the exchange rate then
I was hoping he wouldn't make reference to me.
Was 8 Naira to $1.
Yeah.
In today's dollar terms, 250 Naira is the equivalent of $62 today. In 2010, when we were earning 18,000, when the minimum wage was 18,000 Naira, in dollar terms, $141. In other words, you will be better off if you were living in Nigeria in 2010, earning 18,000 Naira than earning 30,000 Naira today. So there's no significant difference from that worker that was earning 250 Naira in 1990 and that worker that is earning 30,000 Naira as a minimum wage today. But the next challenge is the minimum wage isn't just one way to look at it. The median wage. The evidence also shows that the minimum wage is declining, but the median wage as well is also declining. Now, we need to look at being able to boost worker productivity to be able to ensure that people earn more. And that also allows and has a spiral effect on purchases that households will make and being able to get them quickly out of poverty. One of the other challenges we've seen with the minimum wage is the minimum wage doesn't allow Nigeria to attract a lot of investors. You know the Dubai model. Dubai currently has a population whereby 90% of the population are expatriates because of the sort of opportunities that are in
existing
Dubai.
There.
In Germany, Germany has a minimum wage of $2,180. In other words, the amount of money that a German worker who's on the minimum wage will earn per day is how much the Nigerian worker will earn per month. And we've seen that ladder, which makes a lot of opportunities for minimum wage workers or for skilled workers to migrate into countries. So Nigeria right now is really not an attractive destination for workers who are highly skilled. And again, how has our journey been since 1960 or from 1990? If we look at the most recent 3 decades, what we've seen is that Nigeria had a lot of wealth measured by our GDP per capita, purchasing power parity terms. Nigeria, based on the World Bank's report, and we had a higher GDP per capita than China and India. But what we've seen, what those countries have done is consistently they've been able to grow at single and double-digit rates. We've seen a decline in our GDP per capita between 1990 to 2000, we've seen a bit of a growth between 2000 to 2010, and 2010 to 2019, we've seen some growth. The challenge Nigeria has had, two major things. First is there's been negative growth, and when there has been growth, growth has been very slow. Laddie.
Wow.
Wow,
Well,
that's
it does say a
true.
lot. It does say a lot about our journey, and we can only say thank you, Babajide. A lot of statistics crunched there. It comes out sounding easy, but I know that a lot of work has gone into
always,
that.
Man. Hopefully, I'll join you later to share some
Thank
of
you.
what
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
We're still going
Thank
to
you
look
so
at it
much.
on the other side of the break. Remember,
That's right.
we did ask people to have their say. So
Yes.
we will be taking your comments, looking at everything that you have to say to us on the show. We also have, on the other side of the break, the Minister of Sports and Youth Development, Sunday Dare. He's going to talk to us as well. And we do have our panel that's also going to speak to us about our politics, our progress, our unity, and our togetherness. So stay with us.
Those days, found out that children are being fed very well because there are so many things available. Like my own child, like my own children, many of them don't know what is called this condensed milk. There's even the geisha of that time is not now. And I remember in those days, one of my aunt that I lived with had these stores. Every now and then you find out that we call them Standard Organization of Nigeria. They will just bump into the store. See how much we are being asked to sell the wares. How much are you selling it? Are they of good standard? Are they expired? So every stock owner, every supermarket has the fear of God that has the fear of the nation that anytime these people can come to check what I'm selling. Nigerian government are monitoring every item being imported into Nigeria. So you cannot just import anything into Nigeria. So standard of living is so good that, and the government then also have a standard of how you can build your house, especially in some areas. How you build your house, with material you used to build it. Then where we have this rural area, it's so peaceful. Standard of living is so low at that time because many things have been subsidized by the government.
Those days, even the best ones that will go abroad to go and study, when they study, the next minute they finish. They don't stay back, even most of them, even a day or two, because they are very anxious of coming back to their country. And when they come back, there is a good job waiting for them, and they are well paid. And everything, that is when people, have their country at heart. But the reverse is the case now. Many Nigerians, especially the youth, even the old, are looking for a way to do what? To leave the country.
The Yaba area of Lagos is seen as the birthplace of tech startups in Nigeria, as it has birthed many tech startups that have changed the face of many sectors in the country. Some have even likened it to Silicon Valley in Palo Alto, California, in the United States of America. What is now known as Yabacon Valley lies on Herbert Macaulay Way in the Yaba area of Lagos, measuring about 11.8 kilometers. It houses Nigeria's first startup incubator and a host of other startups that have shaped Nigeria.
Our intention was always, how do we quickly accelerate the growth of that ecosystem? How do we attract the right support and attention to the young people that started building great, technology solutions from Lagos and from the rest of Nigeria, to be honest. How do we get them to access the resources they need to grow? And one of the ways we figured we needed to take was to create a cluster, create a location where these companies co-locate.
Partnership with the Lagos State Government, Technovision and Main One, the ISP provider, they laid 27 kilometers of fiber optic cable around Yaba, Shomolu area. And then because of that, access to unlimited internet, uncapped internet, people started to move in around there.
With over $1.85 billion in investment raised since 2010, with 90% of that figure from foreign sources and millions of jobs created for the youths, experts believe more can be attracted.
We have a policy environment that is not anti-innovation. I think number two is also to commit very strongly to a pipeline, building capacity so that when, more hands are needed, they will be available. And I think the third, which is probably the most critical, is to also, beyond just policy and capacity building, is to celebrate and encourage innovation.
There's justification for why we should see more clusters. I think Yaba has inspired this to a large extent.
After incubating tech startups that have affected various sectors of the economy and lives of Nigerians, Yabacon Valley gained global recognition, including visits by CEOs of Facebook, Google, and Twitter. With the federal government supporting tech hubs in other parts of the country, enthusiasts believe that other regions will also build an ecosystem that will thrive, incubate great startups, and ultimately be seen as key players in the global tech ecosystem.
All right, thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back to Nigeria at 60, Diamond in the Rough. Victor Matas's report there highlighting the impact that the youth have been making down the years all the way up until today, particularly in the area of information and communications technology. IJ, how fitting then that we should speak to the Minister of Youth Development and of course, Sports,
That's right.
Mr. Sunday Dari, who joins us from our Abuja studios. Welcome, Mr. Dari. Thank you for joining us on this special day, and happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Let me launch straight into it and talk to you about, or ask you about, youth development and the creative unleashing of their potentials. How do you think we're fared in that respect? Do you think we've done well?
Well, I think we've done well, particularly when you look at the level of the individual youth through very personal initiative of our talented youths. But also in the last 5 or so years, we've seen the government moving under President Buhari to embrace the tech hubs. We just saw a clip about Yabacon. Yabacon is our answer to Bangalore in India, is our answer to Silicon Valley in America. And apart from Kenya and South Africa, no other country in Africa has the number of tech hubs that we have across the country. And they have continued to increase in number, and they're getting support from government. So I think we have done well so far. But of course, we need to deepen that process. We know that we live in an age where there's digital skills gap. Apart from innovation, there are over 220 digital tools that can be created. We need to equip our youth with the digital skills they need to be able to play in the present digital economy. There are still quite a number of things we need to do. We need to ratchet up the number. We need to create and support more tech hubs. We need to turn many of our youths to techpreneurs by providing them the necessary capital and credit they need to be able to get their own startups up and running.
What you've just said, what you just described would be the #1 complaint of many of those youth, that even when they come up with many of these ideas and many of these technologies, they don't get support. So maybe the next logical question would be, in what practical way is government setting out to assist these ones? For example, those in the Yabacon Valley that we talked about.
Well, let me also try to expand it. Beyond those in the Yabacon, those that develop the apps and so on, we have our youth also engaged in the creative industry in several aspects of creating content, entertainment, and other key aspects, even in agriculture, smart agriculture. So when you look at the whole gamut of youth involvement, it goes beyond just Yabacon. But let me respond to your question. It is true that they have encountered a number of challenges, particularly the cumbersome access to credit and finance. But also side by side with that is also the uptake. The uptake you expect from the private sector is not there. Because when you look at India and a couple of other countries, even China, once their youth develop these new tools, there's an uptake on the part of government, but also largely on the part of venture capitalists and also private sector. So first, I think in a deliberate way, the government needs to have a deliberate policy that will create a pipeline or uptake. As soon as these things are developed, the government will serve as a buffer between the youth and also the private sector. The government on its part can also take up some of this, but remember, partnership with the private sector is now the in thing. Secondly, after 1 year of being minister, I have seen that there's a dearth of credit facilities. The access to credit is not there for our youth. Some of them, before they get credit, the ideas they have, time will have overtaken them. So we know that just about 2 months ago, the president approved the establishment of the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund, NYIF, for the first time. That's a 75 billion naira fund to invest in the ideas, innovative ideas, enterprise, and skills of our youth. And every Nigerian youth who has an idea, who has an existing business or enterprise, will be able to apply for this fund. I can say that from Monday, the portal for application will open, and every Nigerian youth, whether in Yabacon or you're involved in smart agriculture or you have a brilliant idea, you just need to go through the application process, write your proposals, that will be reviewed, and you can draw directly from the fund. The beauty about the fund is that the fund is a ring-fenced fund. That is, the fund there cannot be used for any other purpose than to invest in the ideas, innovative minds and skills of our youth. And we hope that this will endure.
Mr. Derek, what is the creative plan for sports and our youth in the next decade? I mean, we've looked at the beginning when we were talking about milestones, we talked about 1996 and what a year it was for us. But then, we find that we sort of fall into tournaments and competitions, and there's always that narrative around the preparation, and we are not lacking creative youths. Is there a creative plan for us in the next 10 years for youths to key into outside Yabacon now? And what would it be? What are you starting with?
Absolutely. I think sometime in June, we did roll out a 10-year sports development plan. What we have had in the past is a departure from sports development. We just simply funded competitions. We wait for Olympics to come, we fund our participation in Olympics. We wait for Commonwealth Games, All African Games, sports festival. But the real sports development itself did not take center stage. So what we've done is to have a 10-year plan that will see us have a sports development that transcends just attending competitions. And what that does is it has at its core a sports industry policy. We have a draft of that already. We're trying to build a business model around our sports, to turn our sports into industry that will put value on our athletes, on our young ones. But also embedded within that is a talent hunt program that focuses on grassroots sports where the talented youth are vested at an early age. They are put through a program to our federations and supported to hone their skills. We believe that if private fund comes into sports development in terms of infrastructure, investment, incentive, driven by the sports industry policy, which we hope to deliver before the end of this year, we're going to see a huge transformation. When you go to Jamaica, you go to the UK, you go to Brazil, Canada, America, sports is business. And you see the entire value chain. You don't have to be a sportsman or woman to benefit. Merchandise, you can benefit from there. So we intend to also open up that entire value chain for our youth. Sports in this country, if it's well developed and turned into sports, into business, can generate millions of employment for our youth, can be a new path of revenue generation for government, can also contribute about 2% to GDP. I think we're on that path. And I think the Federal Executive Council under President Muhammadu Buhari, about 2 months ago, reclassified sports away from recreation and classified sport as business. The MBS only sees as recreation, but now sports is business. And I think for us, that is the trigger that we need.
All right then, Honourable Minister, let me then take it from where you've said. I mean, the whole issue of sports being a business and how we need to create the value chain. Is there a link between that, or are you creating a link between that, shall we say, and what is going on in other sectors, so that you're not operating in a silo in youth development in particular? Because in youth development, all these various other sectors tend to have impact. COVID-19, for example, if we take a look at COVID-19 and how it has impacted on youth development and sports in particular, is there a link, would you say? Are you linking all these sectors, and how much collaboration is there between you and your colleagues in charge of other sectors which may impact sports and youth development?
Absolutely. A terrific question. Yes, there's a link. And actually, there are several links, several linkages. You talked about sports and the impact COVID-19 has had on sports. But also that gave us the opportunity as a country to start to look inwards towards developing esports. Esports is a global game, about $1.4 billion, and it's still expanding. We have keyed into esports across the country, and COVID-19 actually helped us and pushed us in that direction. But also, you recall, we've been working with the NESG in the last 3 years, but especially in the last 1 year, we've collaborated with the NESG to be able to work on a sports industry policy. And November last year, we had a 2-day meeting, a technical committee, which involved the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development and 6 other ministries: education, science and tech, industries, trade and investment, communications and digital economy, information and culture. And under these ministries, you know, you have agencies and parastatals. So we're drawing those linkages. In fact, the document we hope to deliver eventually will highlight and identify the responsibilities and areas in which each of these ministries, through their parastatals agencies, will be able to give support to realizing a sports industry policy, particularly its implementation. So there are linkages. We're exploring those linkages.
All right, then, Honourable Minister, on a final note, let's look ahead. Ijoma asked you earlier on about a 10-year development plan. At the end of those 10 years, if, for example, that plan was actually to see the light of day and was to be implemented faithfully, where should we be, particularly in terms of the development of the youth? And I'll give you an example very briefly. There are those who talk about the fact that we talk about leaders of tomorrow, but that we're not preparing the leaders for tomorrow. So in terms of that, where do you hope to see us at that point, 10 years from now, which will be 2030?
Well, let me mention, November last year, we did come up with a new program called DEAL. That's D-E-E-L. D for digital literacy and skills acquisition. E for entrepreneurship. The second E for employability. And the L for leadership and mentoring. Now, under this nomenclature, we've been able to develop a number of programs, most of them existing before, but we have sharpened their focus and deepened the content. And we believe that if we follow through on these key areas, when you look at digital literacy and skills acquisition, that's the future, and it's now. You look at employability. What's the future of employability? You must have the relevant skills to get employed, but also you must be ready to come up with solutions to present-day challenges. Then you look at entrepreneurship. No country in the world has been able to bring down the youth unemployment level without deliberately turning its youth into entrepreneurs. And we have started on that path with the 75 billion naira Youth Investment Fund and a couple of other programs by BOI, by the Central Bank, etc. We are on that path so that we can ratchet up the number. What do I hope to see in 10 years when it comes to youth development? I hope to see that most of our youth are no longer dependent on white-collar job or civil service job, but rather, like we have in Germany, I saw the report that came earlier, like we have in China, our youth can have technical skills, can be problem solvers, can be entrepreneurs, can be wealth creators, can be employers of labor, and that the numbers can go up. In 10 years' time, I hope that the digital skills gap that we have in this country, and of course in Africa, can be sufficiently field to the level that we will have about 65% of our youth skilled in the present day skills that we need so that they can be competitive. Remember, they can work here and outsource their skills. You can work here through a remote with Wi-Fi. You can work for a company in the UK. You can telecommute, as the case may be. I hope that we can have youth that will have the opportunities that is needed and the skills that is needed to compete.
All right, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Honorable Minister for Sports.
We talk about the 3 I's.
Please go ahead.
Please go ahead. We'll give you a minute to ramp it up.
Yeah. When it comes to sports development, in 10 years, we talk about the 3 I's are critical. The first I is infrastructure. There needs to be an infrastructural rationalization. Right now, we don't have the sporting infrastructure necessary and needed for us to be able to develop our sports. We hope we'll have the necessary infrastructure from the stadium, the equipment, etc. The second I is investment. Beyond government funding, we need private investment all over the world. Without private investment, you cannot develop sports. The third I is incentive. Government on its part must provide the necessary incentive that will attract investors, both local and foreign, to come into our sports sector and develop our sports and also invest in the talents of our youth. The last one is the P, which is the policy. And we hope that we can deliver a sports industry policy before the end of this year, 2020.
All right, Honorable Minister for Sports and Youth Development, Sunday Dare, thanks a lot for joining us. Happy Independence Day to you as well. Quite interesting, the infrastructure investment incentive. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we've talked about the movement of goods from one place to the other. We've talked about transportation. We've talked about our sports, our creativity in terms of youth. But Ladi, we're going to now talk about how healthy is the population that we're looking at right now.
Indeed.
Isn't it?
Indeed. And in that regard, of course, we'll take Mary Alali Yusuf's report, particularly about how COVID-19, which is the most recent of the health challenges, has affected everything. And then when we return
of course, we'll have the Minister of State for Health.
We'll have the Minister of State for Health and, of course, the National Coordinator of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Please stay on with us.
COVID-19 is the new phrase on everyone's lips today. And from reports, it started from a live animal market in Wuhan, China in December of 2019. And by mid-March had spread to so many countries that the World Health Organization gave it pandemic status. In Nigeria, as elsewhere, the infection grew exponentially with every infected person potentially able to infect several others. Perhaps the most undeniable thing was the exposure of the Nigerian health sector as ill-prepared and understaffed for the pandemic.
But most of us say he didn't know that things were this bad.
As it is, we didn't do enough community mobilization.
COVID-19, a respiratory infection, is contracted through droplets from coughing, sneezing, or just talking, and by transferring the infection from hands that touch surfaces on which the droplets land. People are required to wear masks in public, wash their hands regularly, use alcohol-based hand sanitizers, and stay far away from each other. Every fever is suspect.
People were dying because the health workers were not equipped to receive them. They were so scared.
Schools and public places were closed and a lockdown was imposed, starting in Lagos, Ogun State, and the FCT on March the 30th. The effect on the health sector was devastating.
So we lost a minimum, I've done the calculation, a minimum of 5 billion in lost sales opportunity.
According to the president of the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, over 1,000 doctors have been exposed to COVID-19 and 16 have lost their lives. Businesses folded up and many people lost their jobs. Most interactions went online, and this has become the new normal. The government stated that it had spent over 30.5 billion naira on COVID-19 in 4 months, about a third of the capital health budget for the year, inclusive of the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. At about 427 billion naira, the total health allocation comes to 4.14% of the 2020 budget. Yet donations towards the fight against COVID-19 from the UN Basket Fund, the Coalition Against COVID-19 and others has run into hundreds of billions of naira, and that's just cash. Isolation centers and labs were set up around the country, and the government handed out relief materials to cushion the effect of the pandemic. In spite of meeting a weakened health system, Nigeria, for yet unverified reasons, has been recording less infections and less deaths compared to Europe and the Americas. Though the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 attributes this to a decline in testing, it is obvious that the strain in the country has less effect on the residents than in other parts of the world.
All right, thanks for staying with us. That's Mary Alale Yusuf's report. Yeah. The COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacting a lot of sectors. So, as you promised while we're going on the break, let's introduce the Minister of State for Health, Dr. Ola, who is joining us from our Abuja studios. There he is. And sitting beside him is the National Coordinator of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu, who's become far much more familiar with us in the aftermath of COVID-19. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. Yeah. And happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I was going to start with
Happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you. I was going to start with you. It's been said that looking at what happened to us, COVID happened to us. It happened to everyone, every country. Nobody saw it coming. I'm going to start with that. Some people have said that COVID-19 threw up the many challenges that we face in the health sector, or the state of the health sector as it is, and forced a response from people like yourself and others in the ministry. Is that a fair comment of the state of the health sector?
Well, thank you very much, Juma. And once again, happy 60th Independence Anniversary to you all. Now, yes, there's no doubt that COVID-19 pandemic hit the entire world, the entire human race, like a thunderbolt. It came and then ravaging lives and livelihood. So Nigeria is not an exemption because, yes, we do have a weak health system, but even countries that hitherto thought to have a robust health system, they caved in under the pressure and the assault of COVID-19 pandemic. And it only further compounded the already weak health system in our country.
Then say that COVID in itself was not a bad thing in that it kind of prioritized health for us, the health sector, facilities, personnel, welfare, and all the other things that for so many years people had been crying about.
Yes, I always say that for seemingly bad situation, the tendency is there to also have some positive side of it. And that's what we are witnessing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, when you look at what has happened between February and now, our health system has been improved in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the healthcare, human resource for health, in terms of facilities, in terms of so many structures have been built and been appropriately managed to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So it's a blessing in disguise, if I mean, so to speak. And as we speak, there are additional facilities that are being built all over the country. And I can assure you at the end of it all, Nigeria will be better for it.
Okay, Honorable Minister, moving away from COVID-19 at the moment, I know we've talked about the fact that perhaps it was a blessing, so we could do something about the state of the health sector. Some have said that we should move away from funding health to actually investing in health, not just in terms of the facilities, but in the people themselves, the doctors and the healthcare workers. Is there, I will come again and talk about a plan. Is there a bigger, broader plan or policy for them? Because we constantly see them either leave the shores of this country to work in other areas, and the ones that remain are not particularly happy. What is the plan for healthcare workers?
Well, the plan is holistic. When I say it's holistic, you are looking at the governance structure as it affects health. You are looking at human resource for health. You are looking at research. You are looking at community participation. You are looking at so many other things. And of course, we've talked about medical tourism. And the question is, why do people go for medical tourism? It's just, looking for what you desire, what you want. For example, patients want to be in a hospital and feel as if they are in a 5-star hotel. And we had that before in this country, in the early 60s and late 50s, where people were also coming here for medical tourism, so to speak. So we are looking forward to having those glorious days come back in terms of the facilities that we have on ground, and the health can ordinarily, yes, one can say it's a social issue, but then we can still do business even in the health sector, because you're looking at people want to do investigations and they want to be sure that the facilities are there to do investigations that concern their health and, of course, have their appropriate results and have their appropriate treatment. So we are looking at all this holistically. And, of course, we are taking care, we are looking into how best to take care of with the workforce in the health sector. And that's why a lot of programs are being put in place in terms of the security, whether, death benefits, in terms of health insurance, in terms of for the workers, and so many other things that we want to put in place that will make our own health workers to stay within rather than wanting to go abroad.
All right, Dr. Aliyu, let me come to you, because obviously you've been in the news often, and you've at the briefings we've seen you harp home, try to hit home the message about what the citizens need to do to keep themselves safe. Looking back at our health sector and just what you've experienced with COVID-19, where do you place the role of the people themselves in terms of safety and hygiene?
Thank you. So congratulations, first of all, to all of us, to all Nigerians. We have come of age at 60. As far as the COVID pandemic is concerned, clearly this is the biggest, and this is the biggest public health crisis of our time. And it's not just a health issue, it's also a socio-economic issue. It has affected countries across the world. Some of the developed economies have lost at least a third of their GDP. The UK, for instance, they've lost about 17 years of growth. So it's been disastrous for the socio-economic side. But we have been relatively lucky in Nigeria. We've been relatively lucky in terms of the number of deaths we've had. 1,000 deaths is still too much, but compared to other countries, it really isn't that high. But what do we need to do? We at the PTF continue to be very concerned about the level of compliance with some of these non-pharmaceutical interventions. Now, the earlier presentation we had, they talked about whether the strain, the coronavirus strain in Nigeria is probably different. That's not true. Part of the reason why we haven't had so many deaths is the nature of our demography in terms of age. We don't have a lot of elderly people compared to other countries. we have a relatively youth bulge. And youths generally don't tend to have a severe infection. But nevertheless, for every elderly person infected, the likelihood of death is still significant. We've looked at our numbers. If you're above the age of 65, you have an almost 1 in 5 chance of dying if you catch COVID. And again, I would caution when it comes to the numbers, as you correctly said, we are not testing enough. And we know that even within the PTF, for every single positive we have, we're possibly missing between 7 to 10 cases of COVID-19. And I remember at the beginning of the epidemic, when there was a lot of talk about India, and people saying that, oh, it's surprising India hasn't really had a nasty outcome. And see what's happening in India now. So I would be very cautious. We will continue to work with communities, we'll continue to work with government and the private sector, but it's really important that people continue to protect themselves and continue to protect their loved ones. The 3 key non-pharmaceutical interventions that we have pushed through, the use of face masks, for instance, the hand washing, and the maintenance of physical distancing is crucial if we want to interrupt transmission. COVID has not gone away. We shouldn't be complacent. And as you can see from the NCDC numbers, they fluctuate quite a lot. Some days we have less than 100 cases a day. Some days, like in the last 24 hours, we've had about 200 or 210 so far. So those numbers will continue to fluctuate as the number of tests change. We have given resources, the federal government has given resources to the states, and we are insisting that the states use these resources to improve testing and to improve surveillance. And if that happens, we're going to be testing a lot more in the country, and there's a likelihood we'll have relatively higher numbers than what we are currently having at the moment. It has not gone away. It's not uhuru yet. We need to continue to protect ourselves and protect our loved ones, particularly those that are most vulnerable to having severe infection.
All right, before I ask you for your closing comments, where are we in terms of finding a vaccine? I know the last time we talked about this, different remedies, traditional alternative medicine and all that had been submitted, and they were supposed to go through NAFDAC and all that. Where are we? Are we any closer to finding a vaccine here in Nigeria now, not globally?
So what I would say is it's far more likely that a vaccine will come from outside the country. From the domestic side, we are not anywhere near finding a vaccine. At the moment, there are at least 7 candidate vaccines that are being trialed. They've reached clinical phase 3 trials. Some of them look quite promising, but it also depends on the efficacy of the vaccines. For vaccines that have efficacies of less than 40%, forget it. They're not going to work. But again, I will remind Nigerians, we already have a form of vaccine with us. And these are the protective measures that we currently are pushing. They are far more effective than any vaccine we are likely to have. The problem with them, of course, is compliance. But even if you have an effective vaccine, it will not be as effective as you wearing your mask, a combination of wearing your mask, washing your hands, keeping physical distancing, and making sure you observe respiratory etiquette. They will not be as effective as those 4 measures. But of course, we very much welcome our scientists in country that continue to work, but the level of investment in terms of research, etc., in country makes it very unlikely that a vaccine will be found from the domestic source. It's far more likely that it's going to come from outside the country. If it does, we're already working with our partners to make sure that the vaccines will be available to 2 groups primarily: healthcare workers and those that are vulnerable, i.e. those above the age of 65 and those with comorbidities, etc. But we'll continue to work. NIMA, for instance, is already doing quite good work when it comes to the diagnostic side. I'm sure you've heard of the molecular assay that they've developed, which we are currently going to make sure that they put through the normal validation to make sure that it's competitive and it has similar performance to what we currently have. But from the domestic side, I would say a vaccine, we're still very far off from having a domestic solution to vaccine. But we already have an alternative that is just as good, and we will continue to ask Nigerians to please observe those alternatives.
Let me ask the Honorable Minister of State, while thanking Dr. Liu, let me ask the Honorable Minister of State, let me take a cue from the question Ijoma has been asking, and to ask you in this final moments of this segment to look forward. Where do you think the health sector post-COVID would be, say, in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, post-COVID in the next 5 to 10 years, as you said, it will be better for it in terms of facilities, infrastructures on ground to assist us and move us further in our healthcare system generally. But having said this, it is also important to say that that collaboration and partnership that we need, vertically, that is from the national to federal, to the state, to the local government, of course, to the communities as well. And of course, the partnership with the private sector in terms of boosting the facilities and the healthcare generally is very, very key. And maybe on a final note to say that it is important for individuals to take primary responsibility for their health. We say you are what you eat. So whatever goes in, whether alcohol, well, people that smoke, we say smoking is not good for your health because we are beginning to see increased number of non-communicable diseases, which, smoking takes a very, very high percentage in this aspect. And of course, we also want our people to bear with us, particularly because we've seen a lot of posts on social media. We are in a period of pandemic, in which case people must be willing and ready to bear with some level of discomfort.
All right, then, Dr. Mamora, thank you very much. An onerous task it is, superintending the health sector, especially during a time like this. But we wish you the very best of luck alongside Dr. Sani Aliu, the National Coordinator of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Thank you, both of you, for joining us. Happy Independence Anniversary. And as a parting shot, using you as a point of contact, let us thank all the health workers who have worked during the course of this COVID-19 pandemic. We sincerely appreciate their efforts and their hard work and wish them the very best as we continue. Thank you so very much.
Well, let's get some feedback now, some audience feedback from Sunday Jonathan. Oh, do remember that the hashtag is hashtag Nigeria Diamond in the Rough and hashtag CTV Nigeria at 60. So from Sunday Jonathan, if tolling the road will make our highway pothole free and motorable, then the government should go ahead and do that. I don't know whether everybody else will agree.
Well, I agree with that, indeed.
Then from St. Paul, we have, let us borrow from whoever we need to borrow to develop Nigeria. Borrowing is not bad at all, so he says. Anyway, and the one thing on my mind in terms of a diamond is electricity. And that is coming from Toby Ash. Ladi.
The things that worry us remain the same, have remained the same, the areas of priority where people want action, infrastructure, as you pointed out, electricity. These are the diamonds that people would want to see. But as Minister Fashola pointed out, diamonds are always found in the rough. Right. And it's the cleaning and the polishing that is the real work that is to be done. While we're talking of all of this, one of the things that seems to determine whether or not all the things that we want to see, all the things that we want to do come out the way we expect, is the politics, the good governance. And in this regard, we cannot have enough time to discuss all of this. But first of all, let me bring in Professor Pat Utomi. Professor Utomi is an expert in economic activity. He joins us from via Zoom, as you can see, from here in Lagos. Professor Utomi, thank you for your time and happy Independence Anniversary. Before I allow you to respond, let me say that we'll also be joined very shortly by Professor Aki Oyebode, Dr. Junaid Mohammed, who is in our Kano studio. And we expect also to be joined by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina. But Professor Utomi, happy anniversary.
Same indeed to you.
Earlier on, you were quoted as saying that the roadblock to Nigeria's economic success is its political elite. Can you expatiate on that point a little?
Well, I have no doubt in my mind about that. You see, opportunities will always exist. What happens or what it turns out is a function of how you manage it. And I think that the political class in Nigeria has not managed development well. And I have evidence to show for it. Our country's economy has been referred to as a recursive economy. And this is not my phraseology. I was privileged on a DFID program many years ago to be working with a group of economists from Cambridge and Oxford on drivers of change in Nigeria. And we were sitting in some hotel room in Abuja past midnight, looking at the graphs of how Nigeria's economy had traveled. And one of them just said, my goodness, this is a classic recursive economy. 2 steps forward, 4 steps backwards. And I said to them, what do you think is responsible for this? Guys, I can't figure it out. I don't know. I said, well, I can figure it out. I can tell you. Nigeria has weak institutions. So when the right policies are made under pressure, usually, you know, just like we're talking about deregulation now because we're under pressure. We don't have the money to pay. I mean, these are things we should have done years ago. Even in this administration, we should have done that a long time ago. But whenever it's convenient, the Nigerian political class wants to, I don't know, provide those opportunities for rents to be extracted. When they then get into a corner, they immediately realize, oh my goodness, the sensible thing to do is to deregulate, for example. And they say, oh, let's deregulate. But there is no real commitment deep inside to that policy choice. So once you begin to do something, there is some pushback. The institution is too weak, and we run away from that policy choice. And so we end up with a recursive economy. So I said to my friends from Cambridge and Oxford, the real problem with the Nigerian economy, and I can give you a number of variables you can use when you want to understand it. You got to look at the institutions. Because of weak institutions, as the example I've just given, we get to be pushed back and pushed forward. You make the right policy choices. So policy choices matter. We don't always make the right policy choices until we're under pressure. The structural adjustment program, for example. When in 1982, the Nigerian economy was in a structural cul-de-sac, it was clear that Nigeria needed to, in fact, I tell stories about being at INSEAD, and a professor of global finance from Stern School of New York was making a presentation of exchange rate divergence from purchasing power parity. And you know, Latin America used to be crazy in those days. And Africa was strange. Could see Asia, could see the Asian purchasing power parity line going straight, and the divergence from that line being just marginal. You saw Africa, like Latin America, going really, really wild. But one was wild beyond contention, beyond management, was Nigeria. The exchange rate was way out of the graph relative to Nigeria's purchasing power parity. Now, we knew all that period that what was reasonable to do was essentially to devalue our currency, 82, 83, 84. We continued to play this game. By the time we had no choice, we were in a lockdown, we were Venezuela type scenario. It was 1985. And academics were still speaking funny grammar. And President Babangida had to come up with a clever way to deal with it. It was called a structural adjustment program that was whatever we called it. But anyway, we finally, under pressure, began to make some correct policies. But as those policies were being made, weak institutions, like the central bank, for example, are using stabilization securities to contain its perception of inflation, led to the death of 7-year money or long-term finance in the Nigerian economy. So these things are the things I said to my friends from Cambridge and Oxford on that project were the problems that made the Nigerian economy recursive. Of course, the other issues, the other variables you have to deal with, human capital, the quality of human capital, level of entrepreneurship in the economy. There's a way that you will run an economy, and entrepreneurs don't feel like playing in that economy. Let me tell you, when Forbes magazine said Nigeria was a money-losing machine last year, they were not trying to insult Nigeria. They were essentially looking at objective data. Today in Nigeria, any governor can wake up, cancel your C of O, and you've invested billions of naira in that land to do something. If you are rational, you are going to Nigeria, you don't want to invest long-term. You want to play games that no governor can deal with. So the ease of doing business, we can talk a lot about it. The reality is Nigeria is not easy to do business until we can re-educate our political class to understand that people look at long-term things and not short-term personal advantage. We will be in serious trouble. We are shortchanging our children, we are shortchanging the future, and I don't think they're wicked. They're just not knowledgeable enough to realize the damage they're doing. I know that plunder is a motivation for politics. We go back 1850, Frederick Bastiat, legal plunder. You know, many people go, but education, strong institutions, and all of those make politicians, especially when there is a real democracy and there's rational public conversation. And politicians realize they would make a terrible mistake against the interest of their people, and they will be held accountable for it.
Prof, we want to put you on pause.
Yes.
Prof, we need to put you on pause there. Ijoma, you wanted to...
Yes, sorry about that. We will come back to you. But the president did speak today, and he talked about our institutions, he talked about the economy, and the bits that you're mentioning. Let's listen to what he has to say, and then we'll come back to you for a response.
Strengthening institutions to make them stronger in protecting national interests, and G, imbibing tolerance in diversity. I am a firm believer in transparent, free, fair, and credible elections, as has been demonstrated during my period as a democratically elected president. The recent build-up and the eventual outcome of the Edo State election should encourage Nigerians that it is my commitment to bequeath to this country processes and procedures that would guarantee that the people's votes count. The problems with our electoral process is mainly human-induced, as desperate desire for power leads to desperate attempts to gain power and office. Democracy, the world over, and as I am pursuing in Nigeria, recognizes the power of the people. However, if some constituencies choose to bargain off their power, be prepared for denial of their rights. This goal is made more urgent if we realize that even after a transparent, free, fair, and credible election, desperation leads to compromising the judiciary to overturn legitimate decisions of the people. It is necessary to, therefore, support the enthronement of the rule of law by avoiding actions which compromise the judiciary.
President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, before we go on into the political discussion and into the reaction that we promised Professor Utomi there, your comments are coming in on hashtag Nigeria Diamond in the Rough and hashtag CTV Nigeria at 60 as well. Many of you are trying to respond to what the ministers have said earlier. We'll take your tweets, we'll take your comments as this continues. We still have about 2 hours or thereabouts to go. Yeah.
Now, we're being joined now by the full panel. In the studio with us here is Professor Akin Oyebode. I don't know, Prof, would I be correct to say emeritus professor
Not yet formally.
Not yet formally,
We're
but
still waiting on Unilag.
Okay, we can refer to you as that. Nobody will arrest us for that.
No way, no.
You're welcome, Prof. Thank you for being with us. Professor Ebode is, of course, former Vice Chancellor, amongst others, of the University of Ado-Ekiti in Ekiti State. Thank you, and happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you.
From our Kano studios, we're being joined by Second Republic lawmaker, now elder statesman, Dr. Junaid Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Happy Independence Anniversary. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the invite.
Also joining us from Abuja is Mr. Femi Adesina, the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Mr. Adesina, welcome. Happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you. Good evening.
Ijoma, you want to start with Prof?
Yes, I want to start with Prof. You're welcome, Prof. And we've been talking about institutions. We will still talk about that. But looking at the day itself, it is one of the days we honor the founding fathers. And we hear the best way to do that is to have the kind of Nigeria that they envisioned. Prof, are we there? The kind of Nigeria they envisioned?
Or even close?
Well, I think I will say a decisive no. Nigeria has been punching below its belt, below its category. We're underperforming. And so much so that many louder voices than mine have opined that Nigeria, if not actually a failed state, is at least a failing state because of what we have noticed within the political landscape. The problems of Nigeria are well known. People have said that it is no longer a time for melancholy or for lamentations. But the fact of the situation is that at 1960, when we became independent, the countries that we were roughly at par with are countries like Singapore, like Malaysia, to some extent, South Korea, have moved on much further beyond Nigeria. In fact, you remember in 1960, the University College Hospital in Ibadan was number 3 in the Commonwealth. I don't know where you want to classify UCH today. The emigration of our doctors from this country to the West and to the Middle East has ensured that we are not in the upper leagues of Medicare. We've not had any success story in terms of a vaccine for the virus that is ravaging the world. We still have malaria as a serious problem for Nigerians, despite the good work that the Institute of Medical Research has been doing. In education, well, maybe we have almost 180 universities. In numbers as they come, will give the impression that we've gone far, unlike the 2 universities that we had in 1960. But in terms of the quality of pedagogy, as well as the quality of our graduates, there are large question marks on whether we have actually progressed or we've regressed. The ASU has been on strike for more than 6 months now, and they have informed us that they are not ready to go back immediately, except what they consider as right measures are taken by government to salvage the situation. Many of the children of the ruling class no longer pursue higher education in Nigeria. They go abroad and study in the famous universities that we all know of and come back, as it were, to lord it over their less fortunate compatriots. So that's education score. I don't want to sound like an Afro-pessimist, but I hear that we have a housing shortfall of about 18 million houses. We still have slums in our cities, even Lagos that wants to be a mega city. When you see that we have no provision for sidewalks, and and you see people just drifting side by side with yellow buses and what have you. It's just like a group of termites moving. There's no order, no rhythm. And we've been making a lot of noise about the progress we've made in the railway system. But I know that as a student in Europe, 40, 50 years ago, you could take a train from Moscow to Madrid and go from what was then known as Leningrad to London, because despite the ideological divide in Europe, there was a lot of integration. The rail lines that we are putting up, I noticed there are no electricity connections. Fast trains were not contemplated by the Chinese. The Chinese have created very fast trains across China. And if you're talking of Russia, you know of the Trans-Siberian Express from Vladivostok right up to St. Petersburg. Those trains that I see running on diesel, they can't compete with the modern trains that you find in Europe. What we saw as young people studying in Europe is a far cry from what we are celebrating here. I listened to Mr. Amechi romanticize about what they've done in the rail system, but those of us who have traveled somewhat, we know that actually those trains are not 21st century compliant. When you are having electric trains, fast trains that could make Abuja from Lagos within a few hours. Because I still remember in my student days, more than 50 years ago, you could take a train from Kyiv to Moscow, the overnight express. You go board the train in Kyiv at about 8 p.m. and 6 o'clock in the morning, you land in Moscow every day. So that's the type of thing that we ought to be envisaging. In other words, I'm saying that we've not even dreamt as largely as we could have. We are celebrating little successes. I think Nigeria has not been well served, and many Nigerians are not enthused. They are not happy to celebrate 60 years. I remember when India celebrated 60 years of its independence. It advertised planes, advertised electrical things that they manufactured. I don't know what Nigeria has been able to manufacture. You remind me of what my late friend Claude Ake characterized the Nigerian political economy as a disjointed, or what he called disarticulate system. A system, an economic system that produces what it does not consume and consumes what it does not produce. When you bridge the gap between production and consumption, then Nigeria will have left the train station of underdevelopment. So what I'm saying is we need to go back to the drawing board and reconfigure, reset the template for national development in almost all facets of human endeavor. So I'm saying if you want my answer or my grading for Nigeria, as maybe 40%, not more. And 40% in the universities is a bare pass.
Let my people go, it used to be called.
You got it right.
I'm going to ask Mr. Additional to respond to Prof's, shall I say, grading, being that he is where he is. And Prof has said we need to reset the template. Mr. Additional.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Except that this time Prof will not be the teacher. He will be part of those being graded. Because we are all Nigerians, and whatever has happened to our country, we are responsible for it one way or the other. I agree with him. Nigeria has not performed up to par. Nigeria can do a lot better. There have been many misturns, false starts, wasting of resources, theft, brigandage, all sorts. And that is what led Nigeria into where it is now. But in terms of, is Nigeria finding a bearing now? I would say yes, Nigeria is finding a bearing. We have wasted time. We have wasted years. We have wasted resources. But I believe Nigeria is finding a bearing. It's not going to come by a sudden flight. It's not going to come in 5-10 years. But if we stay the course, we'll get there. Prof was talking about Europe 50 years ago. This is Nigeria, this is Africa, far from where Europe was 50 years ago. But can we get there? Yes, we can, if we stay the course. Because till now, we didn't have a direction. We will go one way, turn around, go another way. I heard Professor Patu told me what he said earlier about the economy and lacking the confidence to see things through. But if you now have a government that can see things through, it shows that we are on the road to where we should be. And it's a matter of staying the course. If we stay the course, Nigeria in 10, 20, 30 years will not be the same, and we will not have to lament at maybe every decade of our anniversary.
All right, then, Mr. Additional, let me, from you, go to Dr. Junaid Mohammed, who is in our Kano studios. Dr. Mohammed, like Prof, you are also an elder statesman. You've seen what some people refer to as the better years, the golden years, depending on who it is you're talking to. Today, where would you place us 60 years later? Someone I was talking to said, at 60, you should be retiring, which means you've done enough to live on for the rest of your life. Have we done that? Is that the yardstick of assessment?
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. My understanding of development, economic development, social development, is that it is not by fiat, it is not a magic. If you want to invest, you have to spend time and make sure that you invest well. And your priorities in investment must be such that those investments will render dividend within a certain period of time. But if you believe because you have certain advantages somewhere, then those advantages must manifest themselves everywhere, then you are likely to be disappointed. And that's exactly where we are today. We're in a period whereby we are disappointed because quite a number of people, and I'm sure those who spoke before me, have restated that we have been punching, as everybody has said, below our weight. And I think once you are punching below your weight, it means you are not doing as well as you have the capacity or the potential to do. Mr. Oyebode had experiences which he shared with me, even though I was a younger person, and everything he said was true. I remember vividly how I used to take a train overnight, either from Kyiv or from Kharkov to Moscow, and how I used to take trains from Moscow to Leningrad, and how we used to go by ship across the Baltic Sea into Western Europe via those countries in the Scandinavian part of the seas, and how cheap it was and how easy it was, how respected we were. Unfortunately, we are in a situation now where, in spite of the vastly different circumstances of our students and those who go on visit to those countries today, the respect we earned, or we were given as students, is not being earned by our students or even by our businessmen, and I think that's unfortunate. Secondly, I believe propaganda has its place in whatever we do, but frankly speaking, propaganda alone does not develop a nation. No matter what we say, the values or the advantages or the paraphernalia of governance under the present circumstances, the fact of the matter is we are not achieving what we thought we could achieve, and what has been promised to us by this and previous administrations has simply vanished. So I would like to have a situation whereby those of us who are in the competitive political and partisan game do so, and do so sincerely and honestly. I want to believe that it is possible to still have a political class in this country that believes in the country, that believes that it is possible to do certain things. I'm not particularly keen about some of the comparisons being made. For example, those who talk about Pakistan and India. Pakistan and India became independent in 1947 through a very, very bloody civil war. I don't think we can survive, or we are in the mood for another civil war simply because we want to be where India is today or where Pakistan is today, because these are nuclear powers. We don't need nuclear weapons here. Secondly, I believe also the comparison being placed between us and South Korea. Well, in 1957, at the end of the Korean War, which ended in 1953, Korea and Ghana had virtually the same GDP per capita. And it is really pathetic that the years that have gone through from 1957 to date, the populations between Korea and Ghana have remained virtually the same, 20-something million. But you go and see what is happening in Korea and compare it to what is happening in Ghana, even though we are not talking about Ghana here primarily. But the development is relative, and you can see clearly that the Koreans have really gone ahead of us. You can enter some caveat and say, look, the Koreans were beneficiaries of a mindset which came from the Cold War, because they got American money, got American technology, they got American protection, and the Americans were determined to establish something in making sure that they established South Korea, which they excise from the main Korean peninsula. We have to be very careful in making some of these comparisons. But I want to say, for the avoidance of doubt, that whatever is ascribed to Nigeria as a potential is achievable. If however we're not serious about it, then we have nobody else to blame but ourselves. And I have no doubt in my mind that if Nigerians put themselves up to something, good or bad, because sometimes we can be very mischievous, I believe we can do anything and everything. But we can only do so if we have certain preconditions in place. One, we have to have a more united, a more patriotic country. We have to have leadership that is serious. We have to simply minimize the level of dastardly corruption, which has been one of the main banes of underdevelopment in this country. And we have to believe that if we say this is what we are doing, then all hands must be on deck to achieve what we have committed ourselves to do. I recall in the years, in the 1960s and 70s, we used to have what we call development plans. Those development plans were not always achieved, but at least they provide a guideline, a marker, through which the political class, the civil services, the professional class can aim at. And at the end of the day, 3 years or 5 years, we can now stop and say, look, in what we set as a target for ourselves, we have achieved A, B, C. We did not achieve X, Y, Z, and somewhere in between, the targets which are achievable, but for some reason or another, which were not achieved. This is the kind of attitude I want us to see. But the idea that you can now come and simply shout slogans, oh, we want to have a free enterprise system. Now, the free enterprise system may work for others. Clearly, it hasn't worked for us. And if we want to follow that free enterprise system, capitalism, we call it, without any mincing words, we have to make sure that there is a broad consensus in the country that capitalism is the game and capitalism is one to do. But due to the time when we keep practicing classical capitalism, there has been nothing to show for it. This mixed economy, which we started with at independence and before independence, is what carried us through and what brought us the two universities we're very proud of, and which were almost the pride of Africa and of which were respected universities. Those universities are gone, Now every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to establish a university, and you see the result. Secondly, every state wants to set up a university. Some of these are nothing but glorified primary school or secondary schools. The signboard, as I told a general, is bigger than the size of the class itself. And we also must be conscious of what our needs are. We cannot continue producing people when, in fact, the economy is not producing the necessary jobs. The market simply is not there for the graduates we are producing. And anybody who has read any bit of history will tell you that one of the most dangerous things you can do is to keep producing university graduates who have no job. You are stuck in the preconditions for a massive revolution. And when it comes, there's no guarantee that because you're not involved, you will not be affected. We have to be very careful about what we do. And we also have to prioritize our education as we prioritize those sectors of the economy, not just education. So that if we want to prioritize education, is it technical education? Where do we place agriculture? What do we do with industrial production? Because if we have industries, but the raw materials for industries are not available, we are wasting our time. And we have been making noise, listening to propaganda from the West about subsidies. Now, I believe in subsidy because nobody has developed agriculture in the world today, and no country today is developing agriculture without massive subsidy. If we subsidize our agriculture, we make sure that our own farmers are helped and they're assisted. They're given the necessary inputs, medium or large-scale inputs. We also encourage this idea of cooperatives. Then we can be taken to be serious. But at the rate we are going, the whole, which I grew up in the North seeing, in the last 70 years, is still the whole I see. Now, if this is what we are going to do, I want to assure you that we can never be self-sufficient. There will be nothing like food security in Nigeria. And I want to assure you that without us being self-sufficient in agriculture, that any talk about diversifying the national economy will be nothing but sheer waste of time, deceiving ourselves. And deceit don't build a nation. The task ahead of us, our generation and the generation ahead of us, is to make sure that this country at least can stand on its own. If a nation cannot feed itself, and every year we are wondering whether the rains will be okay or if they will not be okay, whether we'll have enough fertilizer on ground, the herbicides are here and they can be used, and then the price is reasonable to the farmer, then we are never going to have what I regard as a meaningful food security regime. And
Dr. Mohammed, at this point, allow me to interject. Dr. Mohammed, let me interject and ask Mr. Adesina. Yes, Mr. Adesina, I'm sure you've listened to Dr. Mohammed's submission here, as well as Professor Oyebode's submission and Professor Utomi. They all speak to different sides, but it's basically the same thing. What's your reaction to Dr. Mohammed's position?
Yes, I have largely agreed with Dr. Junaid Mohammed, except when he talked about agriculture. He said we were nowhere near food security. I beg to disagree with him. In terms of food security, we are nearly there. We are not fully there, but we are nearly there. Nigeria, between 2015 and now, has transmuted from a mass importer of food to a country that grows what it eats. We used to spend maybe about $3 billion a year to import rice. That does not happen again. We imported every kind of grains. There was a time we were importing beans from Burkina Faso. All that does not happen again. So, how can Dr. Mohammed now say we are not near food security? We are not there, but we are far, far, far from where we were in 2015. Nigeria has stopped importing rice, importing beans, importing all kinds of grains, and yet you say it is still the whole famine you saw 70 years ago. It cannot be correct. It cannot be correct. And he spoke about subsidy for agriculture. That is what Central Bank is doing through the Anchor Borrowers Program. A lot of farmers have been assisted to plant on a wide scale, and they repay that money. Central Bank came out last week with a percentage of money that has been repaid in the Anchor Borrowers Program. So I don't believe we still do subsistence farming of cutlass and hoe largely. And the food security situation in Nigeria has changed completely from what it was in 2015. Look at a practical example. The world was locked down between maybe March and June. That time, oil prices fell drastically as low as $20 per barrel. Nigeria did not have money to import anything. All international borders were closed. If we wanted to import, the money was not available. If we wanted to import, the borders were closed. What were we eating? Locally grown food. You saw all those palliative things. You saw heaps and heaps of rice, locally produced. So I don't think the picture that Dr. Junaid painted of agriculture is quite correct. Other areas, yes, I believe Nigeria may have fallen short of its potentials in the past 60 years. But like I said earlier, we have turned and we are heading in the right direction, which if we maintain, not one government will do it. It will be government after government. As they say, government is a continuum. If that continuum is in the proper direction, then Nigeria will get to where it should be.
All right, Mr. Additional. Prof, I saw you gesticulating when that was going on. How do you react, Prof?
Well, Dr. Junaid is a well-known figure to me. We were both at the National Confab 6 years ago, and we both studied in the old Soviet Union. And that's why there was not much difference in terms of what we saw as students in the old Soviet Union and what we're trying to achieve. Electricity is basic. Like Lenin himself said, if you don't have electricity, you can't have industrialization. We have a Jakarta steel complex. We hope it will jerk back into life, but we need to increase the level of electricity that is available to the economy. That is yet to be achieved. Even if that is all that can be achieved in the immediate future, it will be a giant step forward. We are just hearing of promises, metering before billing. Those are semantics. You produce enough electricity, and then you have the capability for transmission as well as distribution. Then Nigeria would no longer be what you and I know. Without electricity, we're just kidding. And so quite sincerely, I have not much to say, except to emphasize the necessity for increase in generation of electric power.
Let me go to Professor Patu Tomi. Professor Utomi, you had the first word on this. Now you've had the opportunity to listen to both Professor Oyebode, Dr. Mohammed, and of course Mr. Adeshino. What are your concluding thoughts on this segment on this day going forward?
Well, going forward, we need to have an honest desire to build a future. And that desire to build a future should be fueled by an understanding that democracy is about rational public conversation. We've not been having honest, rational public conversation. We've been having fake news hauled from this side to that side. We sometimes forget the real issue. It's not about Nigeria anymore. It's about these persons. The obsession with power, to hold on to power for whatever it is, I think is the biggest challenge that we have. If we really think Nigeria, 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 I think we will find that we will put all these things aside and ask ourselves honestly, why are we crawling instead of running. And we will find when we examine closely and speak honestly, candidly to one another, that what has happened to us is that there is, I'd like to turn to, in fact, the words of Professor Tahiru Jega in trying to look at the puzzle, not understanding what's going on in Nigeria. He says it's got to be that either the people who are running things are overwhelmed, or that they are incompetent, or that they are indifferent. I don't know if it's any of those three or something more. All I know is that the Nigerian people feel that the people who run Nigeria are distant from the Nigerian people. That the running of Nigeria is not reflecting the pain of the average Nigerian down there on the street. There's too much obsession with power and holding on to it and having your way, rather than having this rational public conversation that can determine what path we can travel, more patriotism, more commitment to tomorrow, rather than right now and the short-term gain of individuals who are seeking to corner power. That's really what the problem is, in my opinion, because if we are really committed, passionately committed to Nigeria, we won't be going around in circles, because we are going around in circles on many issues. Professor Oyibode talked about power. Everybody knows that you don't even begin to go anywhere. I tell you the story of a friend of mine who was a minister in Nigeria. I mean, when this thing happened, he was on a flight, on a West African flight. And he was sitting next to somebody, a West African, who didn't realize he was a minister in Nigeria. And he said to him, "You Nigerians, I want to ask you a very simple question. This light, no light, no light in Nigeria. Is it that you people don't know that if you don't know, I can help you go and buy the power plant from GE or somewhere? Because people have been talking no light, no light, no light. Don't you know where they sell these power plants?" When the minister landed, he called me, said he wanted me to be the first person he would speak to, because he knew I would find that statement a nice little fun. Look, the Nigerian elite, in this obsession with what will my friends get, who will, look at what they do in Dubai. Who produces this power? Who can better manage it? Come in, set up. This is your target, produce it. Then let our people begin to take over from you systematically. No. But Nigerian politicians will want their friends to corner it because they think they make money. Money, 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 money. What are they doing with this money? And they make a mess of the country. We cannot continue like this. Power is not it's not a discovery. 100 years ago, power was solved as a problem. But instead of inviting those who know what they're doing to take over and giving them targets, we'll keep fiddling around with something that will make our friends make more money. And we're putting the lives of 200 million people in slow motion. That's what we're doing. No society should function like that.
Professor Tommy, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm told we've completely run out of time. I think we'll probably have just enough time to say thank you to all our guests today. We wish we had more time to examine these issues in depth. We always wish we did. Professor Oyibode, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you, as always, for your time. Dr. Junaid Mohammed from our Kano studios. Doc, thank you so much for coming in. Happy Independence Anniversary to you, as well as for Professor Pat Utomi, who joined us from Lagos. Thank you so much for your time. Please continue to speak out as you always have, as well as Mr. Femi Adesina. You receive the battering, but that's because at the beginning of the program we did say that's where you are at the moment. Thank you for making out the time to join us, and happy Independence Anniversary. Thank you so much for coming in. So, Ijama, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back, and we'll be talking about something equally important, the economy. Please stay on with us.
I will also look at some of your comments.
We provide you.
All right, then. Welcome back to Nigeria at 60, Diamond in the Rough. And as you've been told already, as we've been telling you during the course of the program, would like to hear from you, and some have taken that quite importantly and have been letting us hear.
Yeah.
Ijoma, true?
Indeed, yes. I'm just trying to go through some of them. You know, they are our online guests. So
Indeed.
We've been waiting to hear from them, and we will. So we have from at Mercy Agera, when will housing be made available to Nigerians and what can be done so that housing can be readily available? We also have from at Kemi Ann Areola, sports in this country, if well developed and turned into a business, can generate millions of employment for our youth in terms of creativity and all that. And we have, let's just take one more, Ladi, because I know we need to move right along.
Yes, indeed.
This is a different person who says we should borrow from wherever possible for us to be able to expand our economy. It will make politics less attractive if there is much more for us all. This word about borrowing once again. Yes, and then we have also from Z Diamonds, considering the vast resources and opportunities that are available in the country, a huge chunk of that should not be used to link a railway going to Niger Republic. But I mean, have your say. That's his opinion, right, Ladi?
Indeed, you're right. You're right. You're right. And of course, for more and more of this, many of these comments are about some of our previous guests. So we'll ask them to listen this time in particular, because economically, what's going to hit your pocket or what's been hitting your pocket is going to prove to be quite important. So let's bring in our panelists for this segment. The Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, joins us. Mr. Rwani, of course, is a member of the Presidential Economic Advisory Committee. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Dr. Marcel Okeke, former Chief Economic Advisor at Zenith Bank, also joins us. Thank you so much. Welcome. I should have started with you, actually.
Exactly,
but okay, forgive me. Ms. Yandi Sadiku is, of course, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission. Welcome. I hope you won't hold that against me, though.
I'll try not to.
Okay, maybe I'll compensate for that in the course of the conversation. But Mr. Rwani, as you always do every year, give us an idea of where we are and how we got here.
Okay. 1960, we started off this way. And we had a population of 45 million people, and we had 4 leaders. And what they said in 1960 was, Balewa, the Prime Minister, said Nigeria must at once play an active part in maintaining peace of the world and in preserving civilization. Chief Obafemi Awolowo said the government should guarantee social justice and personal security. Azikwe said Africans should cultivate spiritual balance, social regeneration, and become mentally emancipated. And Ahmadu Bello said Nigerians must have absolute liberty to practice his belief according to the dictates of his conscience. Now, the next slide here shows that Nigeria had 3 regions and 1 capital in Lagos. We had 4 airports. We had 2 universities, University of Ibadan and University of Nigeria in Nsukka. Our GDP was $4.1 billion, and our population was 45 million. At that time, the UK had a population of 65 million. Today, the UK has a population of 75 million, and we have a population estimated at 209 million. Inflation rate was 5.4%, and life expectancy of the average Nigerian was 37 years. Then, if you look at 11 parameters, 5 of them were positive between 1960 and today, and 6 of them were negative. First of all, GDP growth had gone from, it was 0.19 in 1960, it's now minus 5.4 if you annualize it for this year. The GDP was $4.1 billion. Today it's $459 billion, which is green. The income per capita per head was $92 per head that time. A dollar meant a lot that time. And today it's $2,200. That in October 1, 1960, according to Jide here, the price of a newspaper was 2 pence, but 2 pence is 4 kobo. Today I bought a newspaper at 250 naira. So what was 4 kobo in 1960 is 250 naira today, right? The population, of course, we've talked about that. Inflation was 5.4% that time. Now it's 13.2%. But food inflation is 16% today. Literacy rate was 55% of the people were literate according to the data. Today, 59.6 are literate. The exchange rate was quite interesting. It was 71 kobo to $1. And today it's in the private market, it's about 470 naira to $1. So the newspaper of 4 kobo to 250 naira.
That explains it to some extent.
Right. Now, what is more interesting is that where were we compared to our peers? I will just use only one parameter. Whilst we had $92 per head, China had $89 per head. We were more prosperous than the Republic of China. Today, China has $10,000 per head. We have $2,000 per head. Singapore had $428 per head in 1960. Today, Singapore has $58,500. Life expectancy in Singapore at that time was 36. Today, life expectancy in Singapore is 85. Indonesia is even more interesting. They had almost zero income per capita. Today, they have $4,200. Now, the transition and missed opportunities. 60 years, one thing is important, that in the 60 years, 30 years averagely or approximately was under direct military rule. That's 50% of the time. 25% of the time was under retired military rule. That is General Obasanjo and General Buhari. And then 25% of the time, we had pure civilians, the executive, Yar'Adua, Jonathan, and Yar'Adua, Jonathan, period. And before then, we had Balewa, and then we had the Shagari period. We've had this transition from conflict years to years of oil boom and to years of crony capitalism to where we are now trying to get things done. I think that has to be very clearly understood. Those are what we call the years of transition and missed opportunities. Delayed structural reforms, and the problems of Nigeria are well documented. The thing is that what are we going to do to get out of it? And we've been in the crisis before. We've had the crisis of 1974. We've had crisis of the years when Shagari was in government. We've had recessions and so on. But the problem is that have we learned the lessons from the past? Because those who fail to learn from history, they are bound to repeat it. The truth is that. So in summary, the problems are today multidimensional poverty, debt, and low investment. Of all of these things, the most important one is the low level of investment, because that would trigger, and I'm happy that Iran is here to talk about it. But you can see that if you look at the shared prosperity and misery map of Nigeria, it will show you that the bulk of the people are in highly miserable content. The ones in red, the fairly miserable are in the middle, including all the oil-producing states are fairly miserable, while those that are fairly prosperous are those who do not have those kind of resources. So it means that, one, revenue does not translate into prosperity, and that management of the resources is more important than even having the resource endowment itself. I think that's very clear. And so the bulk of the people are there. Now, finally, what do we do about it? I think we need to get that clear. What we have to do about it, there are two options. One, doing the same thing over and expecting different results, right? That's not going to work. That gives you what we go into the poverty trap. You will never take off. Rostos talks about the stages of growth where you take off and stay sustainable. And if you don't, you get an aborted takeoff, and then you go back into the vicious cycle of poverty. So if you do, and what you need to do, and there are two scenarios. If you do the same thing, and you will end up, there's a probability that you'll be in the same place, and you are probably guaranteed to fail. But if you take these major steps, and I just tell you that scenario A is do nothing, you are guaranteed to fail. Scenario B is revolutionary change, and you are guaranteed, you are likely, I'm not saying there's a probability that you succeed. So if you are to bet, will you bet on failure or part success? And this include major things. One, boosting investment. Two, unifying your exchange rate. Three, removal of subsidies. Four, cost-reflective tariffs. In all of these things, this administration has tried to make some moves on them and are moving in that direction. But the people have to understand that you cannot make omelette without breaking eggs. you want to eat omelette, you must break eggs. And therefore, difficult days are here now, but the probability is that you take off. And when you take off, and the final analysis, the final outcome, when you break through and take off, you will have growth of 8 to 10%. You will have a GDP value of about $700 billion. You will have income per capita of $3,000 where you are $2,000 today. Your meat consumption, which is 9 kilograms per head a year, will go to 30 kilograms per head per year. Your milk consumption, which today is 8 liters a year, which means you have 1 liter of milk in a month or something, or less than a month. Passenger cars, 70 cars. Today you have 19 cars for 1,000 people. You will have 70 cars for 1,000 people. And mobile phone penetration will be 950,000 telephones for 1 million people. And finally, your personal computers will go from 6 for 1,000 to 300 to 1,000.
All right, Mr. Rewane, thank you. That's quite a bit to chew, quite a bit to
No, but I see,
reflect on
I see that Ms. Sadiko was chewing it quite.
I'm going to start off with her, like you did. I will start off with you because he talked about investment. What does that do to our investment? You're big on that. How does that make your task? Just listening to that outline in the last 6 decades.
I always like listening to him because he takes a litmus on what the reality is. And, we were chatting in the room earlier. The reality is that we can continue to talk about missed opportunities. We can continue to talk about the missed opportunities, or we can talk about what we can do now. The reality is that investment interest in Nigeria actually remains strong. It's the conversion that is difficult. And we know what the issues are, the things that investors tell us. They talk about corruption. They still talk about corruption. They talk about the difficulty of doing business in the country and the stability of government policies. And then there needs to be a coherence between our policies for attracting investments at the short end and investments at the long end.
So when you say that it remains strong, are we attracting them? Are they staying? Beyond the attraction, are they actually investing as you would want them to invest?
No, they're clearly not, which is why I said conversion. If the
conversion of the interest,
the conversion of that interest is what is waning. Mm-hmm. But the fundamentals of why Nigeria is attractive, why investors invest on the continent, for instance, Nigeria remains an interesting source for investors. It's the quality of the resources that we have. You can say natural resources, and natural resources can be the things under the ground, can be the things that can grow on the ground, and the quality of the people, the entrepreneurial energy of Nigerians, because that's of real value. Then the quality, the talent, our ability to look beyond, the reality of our situation and say, I'm going to do that. We don't give up on many things, and that also has value. Then the fact that we currently have low-cost capital. We have a large number of people, but it's not just that we have a large number of people. It's the mix of that number of people. It's the fact that the majority of them are young. The median age in Nigeria is about 18 and a half years. 91% of Nigerians are under 50. Ideally, this is a consuming market, and it has the ingredients that investors look for. But then the challenges that they have with entering in the market, with staying in the market, which are multidimensional, is what makes it difficult for that conversion to happen. And in my view, it is those things that we need to work on to make sure that we, where we talk about missed opportunities in the past, we talk about the realization of some of those opportunities in the future.
Dr. Okoke, from what Mr. Rewane has said, from what Ms. Sadiko has said, you have the issue of the potential. Ever since Nigeria has been talked about, one word that has been consistent has been our potential. But then the conversion of that potential to reality has always been where we got stuck. Looking at it as it is today, is there anything different that will lead to what Mr. Rewane described as scenario B, which is the revolutionary state, the one that gives you a different outcome, which has quite a number of positive things? Do you see any of that?
Thank you very much for the question. For me, there are two things I think we should focus on, to achieve that kind of transformation he's talking about. One is that you will agree with me that over the years, successive governments have made a sing-song of what is called diversification of the economy. That as we speak now, is the economy diversified? So what do we really mean? It's not where you set up anchor borrowers scheme and you just direct it to people who are cultivating rice and so on. You say you have diversified the economy. So there should be effective diversification of the economy so that we don't depend on oil, as the monoproduct that has been happening over the years, especially since the early 70s. So we have what is now called the petrodollar mindset, where nobody wants to do any other thing else other than to position himself to, get something from oil. You understand? So he also mentioned there should be some kind of reorientation of our mind, so that people, if you tell them to go into agric, you provide all the incentives and they go into agric effectively, and become productive in agriculture. If you now open up and go into solid mineral, that almost every state of this federation has something to offer, within their domain. You understand? Even if it calls for, constitutional amendment to empower the states to be able to exploit what is within their territory, as against what we have now. There's constitutional kind of, they are hamstrung, that they cannot exploit some of the mineral. That's one. Two, is that for the first time, there is what is now called Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. So, which means that for the first time, Nigeria has recognized the need for us to latch onto digitalization of the economy, to fast track things, to jumpstart, our development. And, the coronavirus that have been with us in the past 6 months or so, has shown us how digital process, can move the economy and everybody forward. That even somebody who is by the roadside frying a bole, can hook onto the digital economy and the whole world will notice that person from that corner. You understand? So even our education we'll be talking about. So there's need for us to unlearn and relearn, a new way of life. And the digital economy will now, move us to be the rest of the world. That's where the whole world is now. Okay? So that's what I have to say for now.
Mr. Nabane, I know you want to react to that, but let me just take you in the direction of young people, because we continue to hear they're the future. They're even tired of hearing that at the moment. We keep hearing job creation with every successive government, and then figures come out of how many jobs have been created versus an unemployment rate of 55.7. That's where we are right now. What do we do for the next, I won't say 6 decades, God sparing our lives, but okay, let the next 2 decades. What do we do to marry that? Because
first of all, you don't have 2 decades, right? you have 1 decade, right? And if in 30 years, China was able to move from having income per capita of less than $1,000 or $2,000 to $10,000 by boosting output and controlling their population, right? They're able to achieve that, but they went about it seriously. You can do it. So we don't have 2 decades. How are we going to do it and make it happen now, instantaneously? No quick fixes, but we have to make those decisions. The decisions, first and foremost, you have to know what you have to stop doing. Farid Zakaria says, stop doing the dumb things. Start doing the smart things, then start doing the modern things. So what are the dumb things that we have to stop? Right. So the theme of this presentation was plenty potential, little actual, resource rich, and cash poor. That's what we're talking about. You cannot have inflation rates of 13.2 going towards 14, 15, and have interest rates on your instruments at 2%. Money is a store of value. The moment I know that the money is going to lose value, I will short that money and I will start moving it to another currency. So you may know that. Secondly, government spending is not the same thing as investment. Government can help and do things. Government can spend. Government can invest with the view of even selling that to somebody else. Somebody has to take a risk and alter his position to invest. And investors do not care what you say, they watch what you do. So you must do the right things, say the right things, and convince people and earn trust. And that is key to it. And more than anything else, your currency must be aligned with your fundamentals. The value of your currency must be aligned with your fundamentals. If not, you turn your country into a speculator's paradise, right? And that's what you don't want. So, but the reality is that steps are being taken in this direction. So let us get it clear. You are moving the cumulative impact of all of these things, including the cost-reflective tariffs, the subsidy things are important. But one final and most important issue is that there's a price and there's a price mechanism. People confuse the price with the price mechanism. The mechanism is what determines the price, while the price is an outcome, is a number. So when you say the exchange rate is 400 or 380, that's a price. The things that go into determining that price is what is important. When you say petrol is 160, it could be 140, it could be 120, but what goes into determining that price? Once you have the mechanism right, then the outcome will be right. And so people, because of vested interest, try to confuse the two. And then when you get confused, you resolve conflicts in favor of your fear. You just say, oh no, we don't want it. And then they start rioting for the wrong reasons. The truth is that you must accept. And if you listen to the president's speech today he talked about the price of petrol in Saudi Arabia and all that. That's the price. But the mechanism for determining the price is what leads to the price. And that is why you have the PPRA template and all these things. We now have to give that a chance. And then when investors know that they can determine the price at which they sell their products, they will invest. If they cannot determine the price, I don't care what you say. You can say all the things you like. People are more interested in what you do.
And because they haven't answered us anyway.
No, they are not.
Back to you for your closing remarks.
In your closing remarks, I want you to talk about this. How difficult is it, given what Mr. Iwani has just said and what Dr. Okeke has also pointed out in terms of diversification, how easy is it to attract people to come here and invest in anything other than oil and gas?
Mm-hmm. A lot of the inquiries we get actually don't relate to oil and gas. So people are interested in things outside of oil and gas. But they're concerned about, the stability of government policies. I actually think that if we get those basics right, the fundamentals that investors need, confidence is a currency that investors like. I like to say that investors obviously are adventurous people. They're like explorers. It doesn't matter how difficult the place is. If there's a prospect of a return, they'll go there. Unfortunately, the capital they carry in their pockets, in many ways, is a coward. Capital wants to go where it is courted, where it is made to feel comfortable, where it is not threatened. It is important that in the totality of our policies, and this requires all of government, even if you have an agency that says Investment Promotion Commission, it is not the work of that agency alone to get investors across the line. It is the job of all of us in government, all of us as Nigerians in reality, because we all have a role to play. So it's giving them that comfort, making them feel comfortable, not only saying the right things that they want to hear, but doing the things that we say we will do, and treating people like them the way we would like them to expect to be treated. Investors don't wait to be in trouble themselves or to be, they look at the way you treat other investors and they make deductions from there. Investors don't care as much about what we say, they care about what we do, and that's where they draw their decisions.
Mr. Okeke, you've been giving advice for years. If you were to advise, Mr. Rabani says we don't have 2 decades, we have one. We have now.
We have now, really, just now. So what, in 4 short sentences, to those who are listening, and I know they are listening because a lot of them were part of this program earlier. Yeah. So just tell them 4 things that they must do now.
Thank you. One of the first things everybody must do is to join the digital revolution. Now, no matter your level in the society, join the digital revolution, because we have what is now called the new normal. We cannot go back to the old normal, even if there's post-COVID life, and there's going to be post-COVID life. Do you understand? That is 1. 2 is that whatever you are doing now, wherever you are now, make sure that you increase your productivity by joining the digital world and digital life. You understand? And the digital space is there for everybody to join. You understand? Another thing we have to make up our mind is to join a kind of, there's need for mental, psychological reorientation. You understand? For us to, accept the reality of our life now. And just like Riwane said, government is coming up with what ought to have been done before, and all of us are seeing it as a very tough, decision. But that is what we have to live with for us to, operate in the new normal. If we remain in the old order of subsidy this, subsidy that, subsidy, how far can we go with that? So there's need for that kind of mindset change. Do you understand?
Number 4.
The other one is that I presented a paper sometime in May where we said Nigeria without oil. That's another mindset that everybody has to create. Nigeria without oil. Because what are we facing today is the reality that the price of oil has crashed. And over the years, why has this economy been going through vicissitudes of life as a country? It's the ups and downs, the vagaries of oil production and oil prices, the international market. All these things are not within our control. So we have to begin to have a new mindset that there's no oil. And so we face the reality of our life and time.
Let us thank you very much. As much as what you said sounded very, quite nice, but our life without oil would be quite scary from those who will be listening right now.
But that's why they've said diversify, so that we don't get afraid.
I'm not talking of myself, really, but
generally,
those who are listening. Mr. Rwani, thank you so much for your time today. Dr. Okeke, Ms. Sadiku, thank you so much for coming in. And let us say that we wish you in particular the best of luck. And of course, Mr. Rwani as well, you advised the president. So let's hope that all these pans out well. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
And happy Independence Anniversary.
Yes.
Thank you.
Happy Independence.
Happy Independence.
Happy Independence.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, we're moving on straight to our next segment, something very important. So please stay with us. Welcome back to Nigeria at 60, Diamond in the Rough. We cannot discuss Nigeria without looking at peace, and that includes security. There are those who say security is a hydra-headed problem, ranging from issues to do with insurgency to kidnapping, herdsmen crisis, communal clashes. The primary responsibility of government, of course, is the safety and security of lives and property. And how peaceful is it in the nation, Nigeria, 60 years on? So let me introduce first the Deputy Inspector General of Police on this occasion, representing the Inspector General of Police on the show. DIG Adeleye Oyebade is in charge of planning and research in the Nigerian Police. Thank you for coming in. Welcome to the program. We're also being joined by a former official, they used to call them spooks, but former Deputy Director of the Department of State Services, DSS, Mr. Dennis Ibakri. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Good evening.
Welcome to the program. We're also expecting to be joined by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Malam Garba Shehu. That link is still being established. But let me start with you, Mr. Oyebade. The police has primary responsibility for internal security in the country. So how do you think we have fared overall during this period to date?
Right. Let's take it from the very beginning. That is, if you go back 1960, we started as a nation, a united nation, struggled to get independence. So a lot of hope. And you can see that build up till we started having challenges. And then we had, the story of the Civil War. The Civil War really marked the turning point, because when you're talking of the proliferation of arms and the challenges that we have, you recall that it was after the Civil War that you now start thinking of how do we mop up arms that have been gotten to the wrong hands. That is very critical. And to the Nigeria police, it's a real challenge. From there, we started having issues related to our own personal development as a nation. When you look at a nation, look at the family setup. The family makes the society. If the family is right, the society is beautiful. Now, you now see issues of cultism coming up. when the family have lost its own function, it relates back to the school. Then you see gangsterism, drug abuse, and lately you see what we have found ourselves with developments that the urban setting that set up make people to now start migrating, believing that the best things are in the cities. And then you see that the cities are now overstretched with the facilities, bringing banditry. Because in those days, you travel from Lagos to Port Harcourt, you don't care. You even travel in the night. Night traveling was the best. These are how we have grown up as we are developing as a nation. The development comes with the security challenges. That is right. But how have we been able to cope with it? That is another question entirely. You now see, the police is to take care of the internal security, as it were. But do we have all that we need? Do we really have the right personnel? How do we train and retrain? And how do we put the right peg in the right hole? How do we get intelligence? How do we secure the Nigerian nation? How do we relate with other sister agencies? How about our neighbors? So all these are the issues that we really have to look into. Therefore, for me, the Nigerian police is coming up with a concept that will address the issue. It is a global phenomenon, and it is community policing. Because we have developed a lot of communities now, and if you look at the Nigerian society, the crime that we talk now, there are areas where you look at the crime that is happening in one state is not happening in another state. We have a peculiar system of crime mapping the country, having the issues that are related. But there are those that are global, that are phenomena, that are all over. But there are issues that if you can nip them, you can prevent them, you can have a safer society. So the Nigerian police have come up with the concept of community policing. And the federal government have done a lot of homework, I must say. People are coming up to say, what do you mean by community policing? It has its root from when the Nigerian government asked the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies to conduct a research on community policing. And the theme then in 2018 was internal security framework, strengthening internal security framework and community policing in Nigeria, models, policy options, and strategies. And then we came up with those reports, and then the models were brought up, and then we developed the one that can best suit to the Nigerian society because of our heterogeneous system and the space that we cover. I am believing that if well utilized, if well strategized, if well implemented, the challenges we have today can still be dealt with the communities coming to understand the problems, the challenges of policing, and come to, to work with us, to understand the concept of trust and confidence that should be given to the police, and then believing that there is no other Nigeria police, but we have one Nigeria police, and that we can still do it.
Mr. Makri, let me come to you. It's interesting he says we can still do it. We're big on audience feedback and what do people really think. So we did a poll about sectoral performance. Which of these sectors has performed better over the years? And we listed out the different sectors. Security, 1.27%. That's the perception out there of how the sort of confidence that they have in that sector. Is it a problem of this is a perceived feeling? Or is it as, I don't want to say as bad as that, but is that where we are? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, perception means a lot, especially when it comes to security, because security is not just mopoles holding gun and standing outside your house. The perception that you are safe will make you sleep better no matter who is standing outside your door. So perception, yes, is very correct. And of course, Nigerians are very, very worried because one of the major issues we have in this country now is public safety. Public safety and security, whereby we've increased or grown, right from time. 1960, when Nigeria got independence, we were about 45 million people. And in those days, there is no problem with crime. You know, I remember very well when I was a small boy, we used to go to, when my father was posted to Bomu, you know, Goni land. If you're walking down the path, you will see bottles of palm wine put on a stool, and then, of course, some money by it. You know, you don't take the money. If you want, if you are thirsty, you drink the palm wine and put the money about it and go away. Nobody steals the money.
What about today?
Yeah, but today you don't try that because society have changed. You know, so our crime level has moved all the way from the days of Jaguda. You know, I don't know if you know Jaguda. That's
I do.
The first gangster, you know, that we have in Nigeria. The first gangster, or should I say armed robber, and he was operating, they call them highway robbers then. Highway robbers. They don't come into town. They operate on the highways, you know, and from Jaguda, the name has become generic now, you know, it can be referred to
rough
area boys or something like that, you know, Jaguda boys, okay? And in those days, we gradually saw a migration of crime from the highway into the cities as urbanization grows up and Nigerians are, you know, actually populating the cities. And our population was increasing. So we have different kinds of crimes. Now, where is the turning point from that sedate society that we had to what we have now? You know, and if you look back into research, you'll find out that actually the turning point was the intervention of the military in politics and the behavior of politicians in those days. You know, because after we have our independence, everybody was happy about the new country that we have is our own, and everybody was happy. Then politicians started. You remember the wet year period. And of course, the military boys were looking at it and feeling that we could have a better country, and these politicians are, you know, messing up. So they intervened. And since that time, we've not had a very good period.
I want to interrupt you. I want to interrupt you and ask both you and the DIG the same question, but I want to start with you.
Okay.
And that has to do with intelligence.
Okay.
There are those who would argue that the fastest, cheapest, easiest way to prevent crime is to prevent it before it happens. And the easiest way to know about it is through intelligence gathering, regardless of the type of crime.
Correct.
That led to DSS and sister agencies like the DSS. Even the police had an intelligence, I don't know if they still do, intelligence gathering arm. What has happened to those? Because a lot of what is happening now, some have said, and if you don't agree, please feel free to say so, that it's a failure of intelligence.
Yes, we've had a lot of intelligence failure. But intelligence itself, you see, what happened? When we started up, the police itself, the E department of the police, was the intelligence unit of the police. And they were responsible. When General Murtala Mohammed was killed, assassinated, they felt that, oh, if we had this intelligence or the protective services, he wouldn't have been killed. So what do? Like any other country, form one. And then the NSO was formed, the Nigerian Security Organization. You know, the father of the SSS. And
Which then became DSS.
Yeah, okay. And, you know, so they were formed. And then, of course, one thing about this intelligence work is that you can gather your intelligence. And there are consumers of the intelligence. You don't gather it and execute it. You gather intelligence, you give it to the consumers. And who are the consumers? President, governors, military, you know, and other top people, even the police. Now, what they do with intelligence is not your business. And that is the area that we're having right now. I can give you a very good example that happened recently the governor of Borno State. He was given the intelligence that this road is not safe, but he felt he could go. And being the chief executive, he ventured out. Was attacked twice. You know, and I hope he will not go again, because at least they continue telling him, managing him to make sure that, you know, he keeps himself safe. There are certain procedures when VIP movements are carried out. And if you don't follow them, you endanger yourself. And then people will say, oh, it's an intelligence failure because they should have known that there are Boko Haram on the street. Yes, there were Boko Haram on the street. Yes, there was intelligence, but was intelligence used?
Let me put you on pause. DIG, is that correct? I mean, you are one of the customers, as you described.
Now, when you look at intelligence, you want to be proactive. That is why intelligence is very key. You want to nip it in the bud before it happens. You want to be preventive, you want to be proactive. That means you have to do more than the ordinary. And when you do more than the ordinary, you must be careful. There are what you call the need to know. When you're talking about intelligence, sometimes intelligence filter out and then there is a challenge. How do you now get back to the drawing board, do the correct thing, and let that intelligence still be a workable intelligence? So it has to do with the technicalities that are involved in intelligence gathering, intelligence sourcing, intelligence management. They are all very important before you now go to implementation. And then the processing of intelligence itself, when you get it is information. And when it is processed, it becomes intelligence. And even sharing of intelligence, vertically and horizontally, has a lot to do with what you do with that intelligence at the end of the day. So all these things need to be put into the fore. And when you are talking about intelligence also, how about the personality, the capacity of the person holding the intelligence? And like he has rightly said, you give it to the right person. It's left for the person to do the needful. Sometimes intelligence gets to the right person, but it's stuck there.
Okay, I know you've talked about that, but that's the highly placed individual. What about those who do not have access to that kind of intelligence? But I'm coming. As we're winding this down now, we were assured to a great degree that there was no Boko Haram in Baga at least. And now you find that even the governor is unsafe. Back to what I was talking about, confidence in the work that the police do. How do you marry those two together?
The police still have to grow in getting back to giving that confidence back to the public that we are here to do the needful. I've said it before. If the country continues to grow with that type of doubtful mind, that can the Nigerian police do it, then we will not get to anywhere. So we have come up, like I've said, with that concept that is going to reshape and is going to give the path that we need to the Nigerian police of our dream. If we continue to look at it that it is not possible, I don't believe, I'm very optimistic that we'll get there. The right caliber of personnel must be there, the right training must be given. In those days, we go outside, we attend a lot of courses, we have Interpol conferences to attend to upgrade our capacity to be able to do the needful. If those things are brought back and we have the right personnel to drive it, the Nigerian police is good to go and we're ready to deliver. I promise and I know that with the caliber of police personnel we have in the Nigerian police of today, working with passion, we will get it and we'll get right.
Mr. Bakri, 1 minute. What, like him, are you optimistic looking ahead?
I'm optimistic if we do the right thing. You know, I'm sorry to disagree with the DIG, but I would, instead of community policing, prefer state policing. You know, because...
What's the difference?
Okay. State policing...
Very quickly.
Yes, state policing is where policing itself has been dissipated down to the grassroots. The people that are, you know, around a particular locality. Because criminologists have found out that crime is committed in a particular locality. The criminal lives around. And people that are there should know who the criminal is. Community policing could be a juice that you use in operating your state police. But structurally, because when you look at the structure, how is community policing going to work? We don't still want that unitary system of police because that makes the police ineffective. But if the police can take decisions, even at the local government level, then I think they will be more effective, they will be more friendly because the people there will know them. The police will truly become your friend. But right now, people have this standoffish thing about police.
And that's what we are saying.
And that's the problem.
That which is what you identified as a problem.
We'll be able to
Let me thank Deputy Inspector General of Police, Leah Oyebade, and Mr. Dennis Amakri for very interesting conversation in terms of security. Many of what you've said, most people have never probably thought about in this way. But so thank you for this input today.
And happy Independence
Anniversary.
Happy Independence
to you. We'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll have our final segment. Please stay on with us.
Welcome back. We are on the home stretch now. It's Nigeria, diamond in the rough on our 60th independence anniversary. I was talking about the poll that we took earlier on, looking at the different sectors down there. We wanted to find out which of these sectors has performed better over the years. And interestingly, top on that is agriculture. We have 12.71% of people who feel agriculture has performed pretty good. Security, like we said, 1.27%. But look at the energy sector, power, 0.85%. So certainly power is on the minds of many Nigerians. In terms of humanitarian affairs as well, we have 1.69% people. That's how many people think that's going great. And a little bit better for transportation, 7.2%. So overall, more can be done. Ladi?
That's like the mantra of this anniversary. More can be done, more should be done. And if what we hear is correct, more will be done.
Yeah.
So at this point, let's talk to those for whom this is important. Many of those who talk at this time are those who, quote and unquote, have had their time. And there are others whose time it is now in the sun. So we decided to call this segment Progress, the people who are going to lead the country from here onwards.
The progressive creatives.
Indeed. Yeah. So we're being joined first here in the studios by a familiar face. I think COVID-19 has made him grow a beard, so he's not quite as recognizable as he would otherwise have been.
Lockdown beard, yes?
Yes. Indeed. So Mr. Kule Afolayan, of course, is a film producer. He's a director. He's also an actor. Thank you so much for being here on this day. And happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And happy birthday.
Yesterday,
yes?
Yes, indeed, yesterday.
Thank you very much.
Now, joining us from Nairobi, Kenya is Debbie Siaraba, who is of the Africa Green Revolution Forum. Thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right beside him on that double screen, you have Akitunde Oyebode, who is the Commissioner for Finance and Economic Development in Ekiti State. He joins us via Zoom from Ado Ekiti. Hi, thank you for joining us. Happy Independence Anniversary.
Wish you the same. Hi, everyone, and happy birthday, Naria's committee. Thank you very much.
All right, we also have Chioma Agwebo, who is the founder, TechHa, in our Abuja studios. Chioma, hi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, this panel, I'm not going to be talking, I'm not going to be asking you any questions about the past.
Can I help you?
I'm going to, I think, well, at least for me, we're going to focus on going on here forward.
Yeah.
Let me start with you, Kule. The most difficult thing that people talk about all the time is that younger people are full of ideas. They believe everything can be done. But then there are some almost insurmountable obstacles in their way. If you as a practitioner, what would you say is the most important obstacle that stands in the way of any young person with an idea in Nigeria today?
I'll say training. I'll say education. I'll say capacity building. Because a lot of, the space is growing, especially now that we're having interest from different part of the world. Recently, Netflix just started Netflix Niger, and at the moment they've started doing Netflix original, like they've been doing in other countries. And if we're to really grow, let's say for example they commission 10 big original films, it would be difficult to have the right hands to take on those jobs. And this, I believe, will discourage people, or they'll have to bring in experts from outside the country to get the job done. So on my part, I've been trying to champion training, especially in my field. And I'm not really talking acting. I'm talking because in production space you have like 20 key different areas, that people can feel. And if you're, for example, in lighting, you have like 5 different departments under lighting. Under camera, you have like 5 different departments under camera. In sound, you have the field sound, you have the post-production sound. In post-production sound, you have like 7, 8 different departments. There's grip. In grip, you have 2, 3 different departments. Under art direction, you have makeup, you have costumes, you have set design, you have props. So, and if you look around, like if I'm shooting now, and there are 1 or 2 other big projects going on. As a matter of fact, we used to wait. Normally, I'll wait for Partnerbo to finish on the project he's doing before I can start mine. And it shouldn't be that way. There are a lot of youth out there who really want to come into the field. Some of them have graduated from Harvard. They study law, but they just feel that creative space is the place to be.
Okay, let me come to you, Chioma, over there in Abuja. You've done a lot of work with women and tech. You're the founder, Tech Her. What are the core challenges you find in your area with young people, young women getting into tech in the right positions?
Thank you very much for that question. There are a few challenges, and the first of them is what Mr. Kunle mentioned, but I think I'll come from another area, which is qualitative education. And this doesn't put the responsibility on the people who need to be educated, but on the government that's supposed to educate them. So for instance, TECRA has a project now called a school tour, and we're working with 10 local education authority schools in Abuja. Some of these schools, I think 6 or 7 out of these schools have never been connected to electricity. So how do you start to expose children to technology when they don't even have the concept of light bulbs? And so we've had to produce playing cards. And on these cards, because pretty much every family in Nigeria has played what at some point. So we've, repurposed what playing cards, and we have some technology information on them. And when we go into the schools, the children are playing with the cards, and then they're asking questions because of the specific bits of information that are on the cards. So when you think about the fact that education is not qualitative, and then you think about the fact that from a baseline point of view, we have the highest out-of-school children in the world, standing at about 13 million. So, and you also have to think about the fact that 60% of this number are girls, because when there's a question about sending a child to school, the answer is almost always to send the boy rather than the girl. So we start out being pretty disadvantaged, and then of course you have quality issues, you have sexual and gender-based violence as evidenced, not only by the real life experiences of people told every day on the street, but documentaries like the Sex for Grades championed by Kiki Mordi and the BBC Africa Eye team. So there's quite a few things, and then there's stereotypes, there's culture. Why are you not trying to be a broadcaster, for instance, or an air hostess or a public relations person or anything? Why do you want to do technology? It's for boys. there's the stereotype of how, tech people present. And so families don't want their daughters to look like that because there's some sort of notion. Finally, there's a security issue, right? If you look at, and I wish, the segment just before this one was open to the public, because you had the security men talking about, the challenges they face, but we didn't talk about security men being the problem for citizens, right? So there's an entire NSARS issue where young men with laptops in their bags are immediately branded criminals, and they're beaten, they're extorted, even to the point where they're taken to ATM machines to, to retrieve cash from their pockets and things like that. So the problems are gargantuan in the way that they present. And, it's kind of like one thing leading to the other. So these are a few of the challenges before we even start to think about the fact that, the market, is the market ready to absorb these women who have this training? Are there policies within workplaces that allow women to thrive?
Let me put you on pause, Chioma. I have to put you on pause, Chioma.
Technology businesses.
I have to put you on pause, Chioma, because I need to get the views of Debisi Araba, who is in Nairobi. Debisi, your experience is a bit different because you operate outside the Nigerian environment, but you are very passionate about Nigeria and what can be done at this end. What is it that your experience has shown you as different from what Kunle and Chioma's experience is?
Thank you very much, Ladi. To reiterate, happy Independence Day, Nigeria and Nigerians. It's 60 years. We have growing pains. People might assume, a 60-year-old country is an old country, but relatively speaking, a 60-year-old country is very young compared with other countries around the world. Now, what Kunle and Chioma have said, I completely, resonate with me. But when we look at challenges, we also want to look at opportunities. I also wanted to touch a little bit on what was mentioned in an earlier segment by Yewande Sadiku and Bismarck Rawani. Yewande specifically talked about this enabling environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. I think this is something that we need to be very single-minded about. As an economy, as a country, as a people, we need to be serious and focused on where we want to be and how we see ourselves. Most recently, I started telling my friends that, if you were a betting person, would you bet on yourself? If you were a betting person, would you bet on Nigeria? And I think we need to bet on Nigeria, and we need to show this through our investments. Now, I lead the AGRF, which is a platform of partners all focused on agriculture transformation in Africa. Nigeria, of course, is one of our key core partners. You can't talk about the future of agriculture in the world, really, without talking about Nigeria. Nigeria has the potential, and we've been saying that for decades. As some people famously say, you don't eat potential. You really need to see that conversion. Just as Yewande mentioned, you need to see the conversion of interest into action. And we're starting to see the green shoots, Just giving you a couple of examples. A young guy, Rotimi Alawale of JR Farms, very enterprising entrepreneur who has investments in Nigeria, Rwanda, and Zambia, agribusiness investment. So Nigeria is taking that know-how across the continent. We also, of course, in Kaduna, we have Tomato Joss with Mira Mehta leading that. Earlier this year, she closed a Series A funding to the tune of $4.2 million, I believe, to transform the tomato producing and processing sector. Of course, we also then have in agribusiness, we have Afyon Williams with Real Fruit, who started with processing fruits, mangoes, but she's also diversified now. And I follow the journey, the entrepreneurship journey of these businesses, and I'm encouraged. I feel like the journey of Nigeria has just begun, but we really need to create that enabling environment.
Indeed.
And so I think the next phase of innovation.
Let me go to Akitunde Oyebode in Ekiti, where the difference, of course, for you, Akitunde, is that you are now in the political field, which is where many of the key decisions get taken that affect all these other sectors where Kunle, Debisi, and others are affected. What's your experience?
I like to say I'm in governance, first things first. But I think I mean, I think our experiences are similar. I think for me, it's really about human capitalization. You know, how do we capitalize talent? And I think that's what resonates across the panel. Ultimately, I feel that Nigeria is in a place where, you know, we need to leverage a lot more technology. And this now speaks to, so everyone's talking about agriculture, etc., which is great, but I think that we now need to say, how do we deepen technology and its use across the country? Nigerian businesses are exporting this technology. You know, Paystack is in Kenya, is in South Africa, I believe Flutterwave as well as in a number of countries. And right on cue, my internet connection is unstable. And I'm speaking from a state capital. So it tells you, if I in Ado-Ekiti, you know, will have this kind of challenges connecting to the internet, then you imagine what happens to the kid in my hometown in Konde. You know, and how can kids in Kaura and Amoda, how can kids in all these parts of the country connect to what is increasingly becoming a very competitive global economy? So for me, the real question is, how do we ensure our talent can compete globally with the rest of the world? Thank you.
Indeed, but for time. I'm having to thank you gentlemen and lady and gentlemen for joining us. Chioma Agwebo in Abuja, Akitunde Oyebode in Ekiti, Debussy Araba in Nairobi, and of course Kunle Afolayo here in our studios. We say thank you, and once again, happy Independence Anniversary. Ijoma.
Happy Independence Anniversary as well to you. Now, this is the moment that many people have been waiting for. Remember the Channels TV JoJo Dance Contest? We have winners, and to announce those winners, here's our correspondent, Ekaite Afia.
Thank you and welcome to our digital studio. I'm Ekaite Afia. And yes, in celebration of Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary, Channels TV hosted a digital dance challenge to Dare's new track, JoJo, with the dance queen Kafi and Dare as our celebrity judges. So it's time to reveal the winners, and to do so, I'm being joined now by Kafi, as Dare is unavoidably absent. But shout out to him for that beautiful song. So Kafi, welcome to this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Busy day for all of us in the entertainment industry, but yes, I'm doing great.
I know that now, you know, we have closed the submissions, obviously, and people were, you know, hoping that we would extend it because they still wanted to submit their dance videos, but we want to hear from you. Were you impressed, or how did you feel about the submissions that were sent in?
Well, I feel that, number one, the time was really short, so it was like a short notice kind of challenge. Most of the time, challenges pick up gradually, but however, those of them that got to do it, you know, there were quite a number of impressive entries. And I even saw some children do really cool stuff as well. So I was really, really proud of them, yeah.
Oh, well, I love to hear that. So before we announce these winners, do you have any honorable mentions from some of the videos that you saw?
I want to say, I'm going to start from a guy called XPD_dancer_. He did really, really well. I love his solo act. Then also Ayo_art. He did good as well. He did very, very well. I also want to mention Satya Rewa. Satya Rewa tried. We have _Tish. Hey, I don't know how to pronounce their names though. Tischure, like TISCHURE _Tischure.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm sure that they'll be very happy to hear that you gave them those honorable mentions. But now it is the time that you have all been waiting for. You want to hear the winners. So, Kafi, please take it away and let us know who our big winners are for this challenge.
Okay, I know we're supposed to have like top three winners, but I have two people in second place, actually. Two people in second place, because I was like, how do we do that, sir? I don't know how you guys are going to do it all, because it was really difficult separating them. So I'm going to start from our third place entry. In third place, we have Dreamcatchers Dance Academy in third place. Yay! Dreamcatchers did so well. I love the children. They're really impressive, and their dancing was cool. So in third place, we have Dreamcatchers. In second place, we have Dance Factor _, and the 8-year-old girl Lucretia, her look, I think her mother's handle is her look events craft, but her name is Lucretia. So both of them are in second place. I think they did very well. Then our first place winner based on number 1, the use of location. Number 2, the style and the vocabulary of movement that was used. And number 3, at least the effort that was done in cinematography in terms of shooting the video. And for me, that winner is Opus James. Opus James. That is our winner, Opus James. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kathy. I know our winners are extremely excited. So, well, many thanks again to Kathy, and shout out again to Dare. Do enjoy the rest of your Independence celebration. And I want to wish a big congratulations to the winners, and thank you to Kathy and Dare. The team will be in touch with the winners soon. So, I'm Akaite Afia, and now it's back to Ijoma and Ladi.
Akaite, those dance moves, Ladi.
Don't look at me. Why are you looking at me? I can replicate that, I'm sure.
All right, so all standing like this. It's tradition for us to cut the anniversary cake. We have our cake in front of us. We have our special guests. Maintaining social distancing, as always, in full compliance of NCDC. So we're going to just celebrate Nigeria. We're going to count down 10 decades and cut this cake and just say Happy Independence, Nigeria, when we get to 60. But you can't touch me, just stretch. So
so we are stretching.
That's just stretching. So 10, 20,
30, 40, 50, 60.
Happy Independence, Nigeria. Thank you.
So we have enough opportunity to just say thank you to everyone who's been a part of this show today. All Nigerians who have joined us on whatever platform, all our guests from the first segment up to date, all those who work behind the scenes. There are quite a lot of people who have worked behind the scenes to make all of this a success. We say thank you. Ijoma, time to go.
Thank you very much. Time to go. See you in another
Thank you very much. See you for another anniversary, and good night.
That's right. Good night. Good night.
The way forward, naive.